I never hate my race, but until recently I didn't know history class was jacked completely. Found my new family with the team going free. My old family doesn't understand me, cause I am so pro-white. No coke, no Sprite, I am rolling with the public, gonna be more white. I saw them twist history right before my very eyes. Insurrection Day, it's in the book and it's all lies. But now I am alive and well to tell it. But will generations down the line be able to sell it? I've always been a thinker on the search for both sides, but they label me an outcast and they cannot tell me why. Guess I'm just a black sheep, white boy who doesn't hesitate to make a lot of fucking noise. I'm the black sheep, white boy, and I wouldn't change a thing if I ever had the choice. Cause the red's the color I bleed. Yes, we all do bleed red. I have to protect my family. So why does affirmative action make them not hire me? Even in the countries where I'm the minority. Is my race just that awesome and no other could compete? Is that what the anti-whites are trying to tell me? Why am I always seen as such a threat? To the point they wanna strip me down till there's nothing left. Old friends from high school, man, I haven't kept one, but I got a new crew and it's where I belong. Cause if you ain't going free, you ain't rolling with me. And there are even anti-whites in my own family. But I am the one who's comfortable with myself. I try to save them from the hate, so while they raising hell. Cause I'm the black sheep, white boy who doesn't hesitate to make a lot of fucking noise. I'm the black sheep, white boy, and I wouldn't change a thing if I ever had the choice. Cause the red's the color I bleed. Yes, we all do bleed red. I have to protect my family. I heard that Scotland is too white, is Nigeria too black? Don't get your panties in a bunch, cause I have the right to ask. See, I'm the black sheep, cause I call it hypocrisy. And the media will give you emotions, but they will not give you honesty. Yeah, you have your feelings, but I have the crime rate. And I'ma shoot to kill if there's a danger my way. So I do not blame the cops, just the ones who are cowards, who hesitate to pull the trigger unless it is one of ours. Cause he's a black sheep, white boy who doesn't hesitate to make a lot of fucking noise. I'm the black sheep, white boy, and I wouldn't change a thing if I ever had the choice. Cause the red's the color I bleed. Yes, we all do bleed red. I have to protect my family. So I put a lot of people to death.
We are rolling in, going free. Let me check the microphone to make sure that's right. Oh, it feels so good. Actually, right off from the very beginning, I want to give some 07s and some personal thanks, gratitude to Heidi Van Buskirk, who the very next day after I completed the roll-in on, not the roll-in, but the gathering on Sunday, the very next day, she reached out to me and she's like, "You're not going to believe it. You were 100% right about Scott Adams. Everybody else, all the other content creators out there got it wrong. In fact, some of them so embarrassingly wrong, and they don't even know the news yet. They don't even know how bad they got it wrong. They're still out there talking about how based, how truly based Scott Adams is. In fact, there's one very little content creator, diminutive fellow, that's out there saying that he's taking credit. He and his community members of groypers are taking credit for Scott Adams and moving the Overton window so that Scott Adams could say what he said, and making that apparently known everywhere. Hilarious, I have to say. I must say, I find it absolutely hilarious. Once again, it's like, how many times do we as a community have to stand alone, proven right? And that's what happened again with Scott Adams. I was so 100% right. In fact, I think at 55 minutes in the Sunday gathering, I think that might be the first time in the gathering when I was like, mark my words, this guy is going to flip his position. No time at all. The next day. And he revealed exactly what I said. Oh yeah, he says, this was always my opinion, was that he's anti-white. So whatever the thoughts he was sharing was anti-white. He tells this Hotep Jesus, he's like, nothing's changed. And he explains it, and we'll have a quick look. Heidi went out and she went to, so he appeared on Hotep Jesus. Then he did his own show, and he's actually talked about it twice. And she went out and got me and made all of these great timestamps for me to watch his show. I haven't had a moment to do it. I've been extraordinarily busy. And I was able to watch a tiny bit of the Hotep Jesus. And we're going to dig into that. I think the whole video is like 2 hours. We're not doing that. But he gets into it right away. And it's almost like I wrote the script for him. I had it so dead balls on accurate. And I was warning you all, don't go out there and burn your reputation. Don't suddenly become a Scott Adams fan, especially because if you are aligning with him, or if you're saying he's aligning with me since he doesn't like black people, then you're unhealthy. If you don't like all black people for the way that they're born, you need help. And that has nothing, disliking other races has nothing to do. I will say it. I've said it 10 million times. I'll say 10 million more times. You're not going to find any love for the white race and any recapturing of our destiny in hating another group of people. There is no group identity beyond the most superficial in finding somebody else that you agree with on the negative views of another race of people or another religion of people. You have not, follow what I'm saying there, please. It's like how superficial that two people like a sports team can be. It's like, oh, well, you are a Miami Dolphins fan. Me too. Right on, right? And then, are you seriously going to be concerned about achieving your well-being by way of his well-being? That's all you're doing, is you're sharing an opinion, and in this one, a very ugly one, with someone out there. And then you're concluding that somehow that benefits Western kind, that somehow gets us to the recapture of our destiny. It never does. And this is the thing over decades that I've been talking with organizational content leaders in the white sympathetic sphere about. And I've said, how do we get from what you're saying is the path, just keep showing people the data and et cetera. How do we get from there to the recapture of our destiny? And in every case, it is God of the gaps. Well, it will magically happen, Jace. That, my friends, is not a plan. That's a wish. And that's pathetic, especially as Western kind and the West itself is going down the toilet in flames. It's flushing with flames. And this is what people are saying. So how's everybody doing? 0022 said, got my hooked up to the speakers. Let the neighbors hear us. I'm hanging out with no white guilt on the porch. Awesome. There's the great 4-0. There's Summer Lee and Heidi herself. Hello to those young ladies. And another young lady, Lacey, and is here as well. And there's a great champion, Tall Kevin, a man among men. Montana Kid, great to see you. There's Franklin, the superhero. Jody and Pearl Lady, hello to the both of you. Alex is here, Biospiritual Harmony. How many of you went out and heard other organization and leaders, content creators talk about the Scott Adams thing? And they were like, he's with us. With you, and for what? With you on what? What's your objective? I mean, talk about what they reveal when they say that, right? He's with us. Really? What are you together on? Well, we just like black people. Okay. I thought you were supposed to be here for white well-being. I thought you were supposed to be here because you care about white people. Because you want to grow a people out of this deracinated race. Okay. But not only that. I mean, think about this. Heidi had given me Devin Stack's review of this. Devin Stack was 180 degrees wrong. Not being tough on this guy, not being hard on this guy. Seems a nice guy, totally nice guy. and makes a lot of content, etc. But I mean, he's got to admit he's 100% wrong on his review of this. Now, he has like 5-10 times the number of people who listen to him, get his opinions, and then go out into the world and share his opinions. How are we going to ever recapture our destiny? I mean, for sake, how are we going to ever recapture our destiny with that kind of stupidity being promulgated everywhere? He's finally been, you got the Munchkin mob out there that are taking credit for Scott Adams. Taking credit for Scott Adams. Oh my God. Just like cheerleaders do, just like sports ball fans do. They have nothing, they're not in the game themselves. When their team, when something happens on the field beyond them that they like, they're like, we did it. We did it. Holy God. How ridiculous. There's Artificer. Violence is life. Great to see you both. Stephanie Love is here. Wonderful to see you. And Davey and Mike are both here. Please share the URL. I can't be around. I know I say this all the time. Really can't be around long tonight. I've got a lot to do still. And then tomorrow morning, make sure that if you are available, 11 a.m. Eastern time, I will be with Yiz, the Unifier, over on her channel. You want to make sure you're there. So I've got to get a lot done before that tomorrow. And so busy. But I can't help but gloat. I can't help. I mean, it would be one thing. I would be like this totally humble guy where, like in football, for example, I made it to the end zone so often. It was my home. It was my home away from home. So when I made it into the end zone, I just tossed the football to the referee and then jogged on back to the sidelines. I let the crowds cheer for me. I actually would go and celebrate the people who threw the blocks for me that enabled me to get there. But I was in the end zone so often, that was my home. But here in the white sympathetic sphere, here I am day after day providing people with information, with method, with strategy that improves their lives. And I'm right just about all of the time. And it can be like a blink of an eye, and a little girl can come on to be a content, some dilettante somewhere can come on to be a content creator, and she automatically has 200,000 subs. And then some other little pipsqueak over here has 9,000 live every time he goes live, and wrong every time. I mean, just backward wrong every time. So it's like there isn't an end zone that everybody has accepted. Okay, this is the place where you score. You get into here and you score. So there's no way that dumb fans cannot know that, right? The fans know, even your IQ could be really, really, really low. And you're like, oh, the two painted up ends to this. When people get into that, those are points and I'll cheer, right? In the real world, idiots, the vast majority of these idiots out there, there's no end zone for them to know, oh, we got into the end zone. And I'll go watch more of that team. No, you don't get that in the real world. Instead, people, midget wits and mid-wits and even uber mid-wits, they have to try to figure out, like, where is the end zone for life? Where are what direction should I go? And they're just being dumb. None of these content creators that got it 100% wrong on Scott Adams will lose a single audience member to me who got it 100% right. And this is just like weekly or bi-weekly. I gotta gloat. It's ridiculous. Celine is here. Great to see you. Nathaniel Westerman is here. Jimmy is here, the Italian. The guy I'm talking about has some sympathy for us, but it's more of a civnat than white sympathetic. It seems people even outside of our sphere love those musicians. And that's on the tail end of another comment where he writes, my friend who isn't even in our sphere really enjoyed Fornull and Luke Mason's music when I played the stream as he played video games. That's awesome, man. We need to tell him that we are done sacrificing ourselves, our flesh, our spirit on the altar of our ideas. It is one of the most criminal things that has ever happened on planet Earth, that a group of people would sacrifice themselves on that which would not exist unless they exist. So share that one. How do y'all like the black on black? Is the tie very visible? The tie is, the black on black with this tie is beautiful. I can't help it. I can't help it. Heidi says, yes, great job, Jason. Yeah, we all should be celebrating this because there isn't an end zone for all the dummies to come. They're not like all watching and they're like, oh, this one over here has 29,000 live, like on average, 100% wrong. So who got it right? Let me go find, and because I want to be right in my world. No, they just don't care. So let's watch. This is so funny, especially since the midget was so excited and took all the credit. Took all the credit for Scott Adams. And so did, by the way, some self-identifying Nazis. They were like, if it wasn't for us pushing Nazism, Scott Adams would have never been able to say what he said. My God. All right, let me find it. Damn right I'm going to gloat. All right, let's share this. Hold on. Let's see what I can do here. Bing. All right, we got to do this. 1 second. I was getting ready, and I was like, this can't even be this bad for these people. It can't be this bad, but it is that bad for them. Okay. Go. All right. And we will pop this up on the screen now, and we will have some fun. Uh-oh. 1 sec. That's not doing what it's supposed to do, but it will. All we got to do is this. Okay, now it will work. It's a good thing I'm so savvy with tech. Okay, there you have it. There's Scott Adams, and there's Hotep Jesus. Now, Hotep Jesus, I really don't know anything about this guy, except for the very few things that he said. Oh, by the way, you know what? Let me get the entropy. Yes, let's get entropy up and running. So if you would like to financially gift me, I would deeply appreciate it. And you can do so on entropy, which is up and running now. You can also write questions or comments in the question widget, also known as the Tall Kevin widget. Or you can head on over to Odyssey. Odyssey is up and running, or D Live. Cryptocurrencies both over there, and Cash on Odyssey as well. And of course, Cash App, which is up and running. And so you could financially gift there as well. Otherwise, please tag me as No White Guilt, and I will speak to your questions or comments. And please share the URL, because the little gets that take credit for Scott Adams suddenly hating on blacks and moving the Overton window. What a dumb thing. I've explained to you all before. You can't move any window inside the anti-white narrative. God. But okay. With all them taking their credit, they're going to have thousands and thousands of people watching. But here we're right. Here we actually change things. Let's listen. Tell me if you can hear it all right.
Consistently throughout Black nationalist conversations. But I want to...
Okay, the thing that I know about Hotep Jesus is that at some point in this, I believe I heard him say that he was a Black nationalist. So I don't exactly know what he means by that. But can you hear him all right? Popcorn Power is with us, says, yep. Your attire fits well on you. You certainly pull off wearing black in a way no other could. Wow, shit, I appreciate that, man. Thank you very much. Art Acrobats is here. Says he needs to do some chores, but listening. And thank you for that. All right, then we're going to roll. Tell me if there's any problem hearing them.
I'm going to come back to the point of your hyperbole. I understood when I first heard it. You saw me crack up. I knew it was hyperbole.
Okay, so they're friends. This Hotep Jesus and Scott Adams are friends. He's appeared on his show before. And so Hotep Jesus is saying when he heard Scott Adams say this, I guess because they're friends, he knew it was hyperbole. Winged Production says Hotep Jesus wants all land from Louisiana to Florida. That sounds, yeah, it sounds perfectly legitimate. Sounds perfectly. If we were to move Western civilization out of there, he would change his mind.
I knew what you were doing, but I got to tell you, the optics were dangerous, Scott. The optics.
Okay, look, and Scott, I'm laughing here. Now, you'll notice when I was, or you'll recall when I was reviewing this, that I pointed out things, for example, like that he had already bought his house wherever it was. His house was not purchased as a consequence of the poll or the videotapes. But Hotep Jesus is saying he knew it was hyperbole, but thought it was dangerous hyperbole.
Of it. And I want to know what you think about this, because you're a huge personality. You have a ton of history behind you, your brand, Dilbert.
Dilbert getting the line being canceled, the agreements to run Dilbert being canceled all over the place as a consequence of the statements. But this is not an apology tour. I told you what was obvious to me, even though not to all those other content and organization leaders that spoke on this, what was very obvious to me. And that was that Scott Adams was not being honest about that. I pointed out how he's a radical individualist, and all that I took in from just watching that a clip of him, those however many minutes, 14, 15 minutes, what that was. I don't know. I didn't know any more about Scott Adams, just the wealthy, bright, and did the column, the cartoon. But I could read that into him. And he flat out says, well, Jason was right on all of these things about me.
And what you say, as you can see, affects the fabric of America. It's going to send ripples through
the fabric of America.
So when you say that,
that's not hyperbole.
Think in some ways you understand that some people are going to know you're being hyperbolic.
If you say something that contradicts anti-whiteism, you're going to affect the fabric of America in a harmful way. No, that's not hyperbolic at all.
But you also know it's going to trigger a lot of people. You don't think that you don't think what you chose to do was irresponsible?
Oh, wait. That's already a ways into this. That's not where we want to be. I think around the 30-minute mark, and maybe we should speed it up too. Let's see how
the headlines verified it. My brief and
line. But before we get into that, I want to ask you something. This is my own personal question. A lot of the other questions are from reading the room, seeing what people are saying. But what I want to know is the identifying as Black. When did that come about? Because that took me off. I was caught off guard with that. When did that happen? How did that come about? Why'd you make that decision?
That took me off guard. I was like, I know this guy. Nothing about him Black.
So I'm trying to remember when it was, but several years ago, I said I'm going to identify.
I was hitting the head hard as I was walking by a construction site.
As Black. Now, part of the reason was that I could. It was just an option, right? So I thought, well, that sounds good. But then I thought I could get the best of both worlds. If there's anything ever that's like, rationed by race, I can say, well, I identify as Black. And if people wanted to treat me as white.
That's a really superficial, and we identified correctly in the previous video on Sunday, that he's a radical individualist, but he's also anti-white. To be a radical individualist is to be anti-white, because it is to leave your brothers and sisters behind to pursue your own wealth, empowerment, etc., at our expense, because it's at our expense that you are able to flee. You're not able to flee with that wealth because of Eskimos. You're not able to flee with that technology because of people from Nicaragua. You're able to flee with that wealth, that technology, to those nice neighborhoods because of us, because of Western kind. So it is to sacrifice us, to betray us, and to leave us behind. It is as though we built the ships to flee from the sinking landmass, the landmass being swallowed up by the ocean. And then just a handful of people like Scott Adams board the ships and take off. They leave us behind. That is what white flighting is. That is what radical individualism is. And he is the personification of that, as I said on Sunday. God, it hurts being right. Can you feel that? Can you feel that?
Because they like that. They look at me and say, well, I think he looks white.
So it's this whole thing, just quickly, about if there's ever a rationing. What he actually means is that he knows when he looks out at society, and this is what I said on Sunday, and he's verifying it for us in this interview, and as Heidi pointed out with all of her timestamps that she sent me in his personal standalone videos, that he knows exactly the lay of the land is anti-white, and that if you are anti-white, you can benefit by being so. And so he does that. He knowingly, consciously, proudly says he's anti-white because he personally benefits. He outright tells you. He's not based in one of us. He's the exact opposite. If the content creator, organization leader of your choice is telling you to bring home a pit viper because pit vipers are on our side, and now it has stung a family member, they're dead, and another one has a gangrenous arm from another bite, do you keep listening to them? If they can't even tell the difference between a pit viper and an ally, come on.
I thought I could get the best of both worlds, sort of a mix. But the less funny answer is that I was spending tons of time working on things that were directly for the benefit of the Black community. So a lot of the things I was advocating for. So, for example, a lot of people don't know that I'm left wing.
How many people knew that he was left wing? I didn't. I didn't know what his socio-political stance inside the anti-white narrative is. We don't here in service to white well-being note or give any value to left, right wing, but that's what he's claiming to be. And listen what he says
your
next.
Audience is going to be confused because the headlines are saying I'm a right-wing MAGA guy.
Yeah.
I'm actually endorsing Vivek Ramaswamy for president, primarily because I'm a single issue voter on fentanyl. He's pretty tough on fentanyl. But what people don't know is I'm super left wing. I volunteered to work for Black Lives Matter, helped Hawk Newsom try to.
How many people knew that he volunteered to help Black Lives Matter? You see, it's very easy for white, anti-whites to, and you see it all the time. We've seen it our whole lives. We talk about, there's this term, I don't like it because I don't like to use the word liberal, but they call it limousine liberals, where they implement policies, they benefit from their anti-whiteism, they benefit from their anti-whiteism, and they vote for things that ruin our neighborhoods that they escape from to their wealthy neighborhoods. You're looking at one here.
Craft some useful policies that the right and the left would agree on. Stuff like body cams. I thought, well, there's this problem of police brutality. What if more police had body cams? So I tried to work with Black Lives Matter to see if we can get something going. And that didn't take long to find out that Black Lives Matter was a sort of a not legitimate organization. So long before the headlines verified it, my brief.
Numerical Courage says MC of the day, the abolishment of slavery is the biospiritual expression of Western kind. I like that. Yeah. You're welcome, humanity.
Brief encounter. It was clear that they were not focused on any kind of solutions. I'm not sure if everybody knows that, but that's pretty well established. When Colin Kaepernick
Hotep Jesus doesn't seem to know if that's true or not. My guess is probably what happened is that he wanted to put money to this or that, but he wanted to see the exact place that, you know, it went A to Z, and Black Lives Matter just said, no, just give us the money. It's my guess.
Was doing his kneeling. I'm probably the only person I know who supported it who wasn't.
How many people out there supported Kaepernick? Oh boy.
Black, because I thought it was a really effective sort of, you know, get in your face kind of protest. And I was confused why people didn't understand that the offensiveness of it was why it works. That's like the whole point. So to me, that looked brilliant. And I also offered to see if I could help on the issue. No, I didn't get any traction on that. The things that I work on the most.
He actually tried, I think almost everybody who wasn't just like vehemently anti-white in America, and maybe even in other Western countries as well, really abhorred Kaepernick. The selfishness of it being, you know, that guy, if it weren't for Western civilization, there's no way in hell that he's making millions of dollars and driving Ferraris and living in mansions and have all of that adulation and all the sex that he got from it and everything. But that is who he pissed in the face of. And this I want to help
investing in right now is a curriculum for homeschoolers that would teach strategy for success. Now, the strategy for success is what I'm getting in trouble for. We'll talk about that, but it's primarily for Black youths who didn't have, and largely because of systemic racism. I think this is one of the most valid.
All right, maybe that's too fast for. I can understand it, but I don't know if everybody will. So he just said systemic racism is a real thing. That's a meme pathogen, friends. He escapes it. Remember that. Our guy, remember? He escapes it. And then he says, you've got to make amends for it.
Parts of systemic racism is the lack of, let's say, role models of exactly the financial type that you want, specifically financial. And I thought, well, if I could be, you know, part of that solution, the book, one of the books behind me tells young people how to succeed and create a strategy. And so I worked on that. I'm trying to finish that up to make that available.
Elaine Sabatinos didn't realize that I was live. And live action over here, Elaine, live action. Great to see you, sir.
I've been promoting the end of systemic racism in teachers' unions because I think the teachers' unions are what prevent competition for schools, and the lack of competition creates everything bad, right? Everything good comes from competition in the free market. Everything bad comes from the opposite. You know, history says. I was big on prison reform, very much in favor of the Jared Kushner efforts there. And I've even argued in writing for reparations because I thought the arguments for reparations.
Writing, supporting reparations. And look at Hotep Jesus. He's like, break out your checkbook there, Scott Adams. Break it out. Break it out. I'll tell you when to stop writing zeros. We're going to have reparations. Now, this is not let me just make very clear too. This is not my comic strip is being canceled all over and now I have to make apologies for it tour. That's not what's happening. Scott Adams knew very well. He is positioned financially to not need that any longer, to not need to have the different newspapers controlling what he says. It's the point. It's like with Musk. You get to the point and you're tired in his age and everything else. You get to the point where you're saying, I'm tired of other people controlling what I have to say. So it's one of those, have you seen somebody at work? Maybe it's you and if you've managed people, you've probably seen it happen. Somebody doesn't want to work there anymore and they'll start taking all kinds of chances that might get them fired again and again. And that's essentially, he doesn't need to be making these comics anymore. He doesn't need for these strips to continue to run and pay him in perpetuity. He's got enough money. He wants to be able to say what he wants to say. So he knew very well that they were going to end contracts, etc., when he said what he said. So that's not what this is. That whole thing was a stunt, as I said it was. And how did I tell you, by the way, What did I tell you on Sunday? Were you here? What did I tell you that he would say that would be the fulcrum? I think that was the exact word I used. So that he could say, well, the study wasn't actually a good study, so I don't agree with it. He even goes further than that.
And I thought it would be useful to say what's the strongest argument for reparations, so we'd have a valid discussion. So that's sort of the background. So doing all of that work on behalf of one community primarily, I thought, well, I like being on the winning team, and I like the issues.
How do you like that? This is a lot. So many of the white people that you've faced that are anti-white out in the world, this is their thinking. This is what you should take away from this. As I said on Sunday, this is the personification of radical individualism, anti-white radical individualism. And this is what radical individualists do. He doesn't care about anybody else in the world, just his own ass. So he's going to be on the winning team. Well, what does that actually mean? Well, that means that white people aren't going to get the jobs because they're white. They're not going to get the promotion because they're white. They're not going to get the place in school because they're white. They're not going to get the government contracts and loans and tax forgiveness because they're white. I mean, we even have Biden saying, I've instructed the Federal Reserve and IRS to go after white people first. Let non-white people. And what does that mean? That means they won't be going after, in my opinion, as many non-white people who are breaking tax law, etc., because you don't have until the ends of time, and you don't have until the ends of people. You only have so much. At the end of every year, they have so many that they couldn't get to. Well, they just want to make sure that everybody that they couldn't get to is non-white. Biden, another anti-white, just flees it, just like Scott Adams does.
I think that they're the ones that have the most leverage in society, because I think if you help the people, this is the basic thinking. If you can help somebody go from unemployed to employed, that's the biggest change you can make. If you give somebody a 20% raise, it's like, well, nice. But going from unemployed, where we paid for you to live, to where you pay for yourself to live, that's everything.
Scott, are there more white people who are unemployed and underemployed and impoverished than black people? This is a sick SOB, as far as I'm concerned. So
if you're looking at the well-being of the country, it makes sense to focus on the people who are in the deepest hole, and it's sort of a twofer, because you could.
It's kind of like the white race in the deepest hole, and far more of them in the deepest hole.
Maybe heal racial tension.
But helping white people would not put him on the winning team in anti-white America. It wouldn't get him benefits. It wouldn't get him laudation for being so moral and according to the anti-white morality.
By being serious about Black Lives Matter. Like, why not take it seriously and invest in the thing that would make a difference? Now, my personal opinion is that systemic racism is the reason that it's hard for people to get along. And this is sort of the underpinning of what we'll probably talk about.
White people are responsible for people of different races not being able to get along.
But the biggest form of systemic racism is that the school systems are a complete failure for Black Americans, but anybody who's poor in inner cities and Black places. So it's not entirely a Black thing. But to me, that's the biggest issue maybe in the country.
So we've talked about the school thing. We built schools, we turned them over to other groups of humanity, and then they make of them what they're going to make of them. But yet Scott Adams would say the problem is that they have bad schools. Even when you look at places like New York, Washington, D.C., where they each student per pupil is twice, 3 times, in my opinion, check it out for yourself. Look at the numbers for yourself. I might be wrong. Per pupil than other schools across the country where there is no violence, where there are Western norms.
The poor quality.
Hey, the great Yiz the Unifier is with us, and she's saying Kip. Kip to you, sister.
The school system specifically for the underserved community. So that
underserved community is another name for Blacks or non-whites in general. Underserved, frontline community. You've heard all of these before. It's just another way. It's like calling them minorities. It's another meme pathogen. You never call non-white people minorities. You never call them underserved. You never call them frontlined. All of that is created as psychological warfare to make you feel in your own thinking and with those you talk about these subjects with, as though you're dealing with a vulnerable person or a very vulnerable group of people that who can't defend themselves, can't better themselves on their own, that they need, in fact, your help. And that any suggestion that you might make about this person, I mean, imagine if you just take this line of psychological warfare a little further. Imagine if you're like, I don't care if that guy's a paraplegic. He needs to get his own job. He needs to feed himself. That's the same direction these guys are going. Now, I can see this like it's written in the sky by aliens for me. But the rest, so many of the other content creators out there and organization leaders, they can't.
That's been my focus for years, and I put my money and my time behind it.
Okay, if you don't mind, I want to unpack a few things you said there. First of all, I want to come back to how you figured out Black BLM was, maybe not legitimate, but I do want to say that Hotep Nation, our focus is homeschool. We're a nonprofit organization, tax exempt. I homeschool my kids, and I'd love to work with you on that regard, right? That topic. So
I'd love to.
Let's put that aside really for a second. BLM, you said, was not.
They're gonna work together on ensuring that more Black children can be homeschooled. Now, just taken out of this context, wonderful, fine. I want them to be safe and happy like everybody else's children. And I believe that ultimately homeschooling is vastly superior to this, either organized by the state or even privately, especially because so much of it's anti-white today. In this context, we know that this POS on the left there, Scott Adams, this POS there, he's doing that at the expense of white children. The white children, they're responsible for the systemic racism. Do you understand how this works in the anti-white narrative? Do you understand how this works with anti-whiteism? Those white babies, they might be 5 years old, but there's this ghost out there that can't be measured, no null hypothesis for it, called systemic racism, and white people are responsible for it. That means white people have to be white guilted. They have to make amends. So even if that little boy's 5, he's going to have to make amends to the Black little boys that Scott Adams is going to help. And why is Scott Adams helping them? He's not helping. I mean, this guy is, I don't know if he lacks the filter to lie a little bit better, but he's outright telling you, or folks that can hear, that he does this because it benefits him. He helps the Black race because in an anti-white environment, that will make him look good. That will get him more jobs. That will, and he'll say so in just a moment.
Legitimate.
Stephanie Love says everybody should be homeschooled. Well said. World Conqueror is here. Nancy Drew is here. Great to see you. Roger is here. Please share the URL. Angry Snowman is here. And when we're done here today, please share this around, because being right, getting into the end zone over and over and over, doesn't help all those tards out there. They just don't understand. They don't know where the end zone is.
Said this 2015 and prior. How did you realize that?
I realized because any effort to put on paper, like, here are some ideas, like in a real useful way, got the kind of resistance that you wouldn't expect from anybody trying to solve a problem. Now, I don't want to, out of respect, I would rather not talk about a private conversation.
Right.
I think that's appropriate.
Yeah.
But let's just say privately, I learned that it was a money grift.
Okay, so this Hotep Jesus is in economic competition with Black Lives Matter. So he's saying, well, of course I'd know that it's fraudulent, Hotep Jesus says, because he's trying to look at all this stuff he's got written across the bottom of the screen. And then at the very beginning, we skipped over it where he's reading out ads. He's trying to make a buck, and more power to him to do that. And obviously those who are financing Black Lives Matter, some of that money that would have gone to Hotep Jesus, or he thinks might have come to him in donations, went to Black Lives Matter. So he's oppositional, which does not mean that he didn't see other things that, like, Scott Adams is saying here that he had a private conversation with somebody on the inside saying that it was fraudulent.
So, yeah, it's not my opinion. That's what I learned.
Real quick,
Old
that's how
Rack is
Thomas
here.
Sowell became a capitalist. He tried to, he got a job in the labor department, wanted to fix minimum wage, and realized pretty much the same thing that you had. Now, you said in reparations, you ran into some weak arguments for reparations. What were the weaker arguments?
Dusty is here.
And what did you think were the stronger arguments?
Listen to this sophistry. Look up the word sophistry. It doesn't mean sophisticated. It's pure sophistry. This guy on the left, you know who I'd much rather have Hotep Jesus as my neighbor, because I think Hotep Jesus, when he plots and he wants to carry something out against you, it's going to be much clearer. This one over here on the left, he'll cut your throat while you're sleeping.
Well, I think the argument that's doomed to fail, or it might make things worse if it succeeded, is we're going to transfer money from people who don't think they owe it to people who think you do. Like any situation like that's just, you want to avoid.
Yeah.
So I thought that there would be a clever way
to get people who don't owe anything robbed to people who don't deserve anything on the basis of that claim. At least they deserve what they work for in the world, etc. But here he is. He's like, I've come up with a much better way to fleece the white race.
Both conservatives and the left and the Black community would all say, okay, we weren't thinking of it that way, but that could work. And it goes like this. Especially the Republicans, if they could work with the Black community to focus on education, whatever that takes, some say homeschool, some say funding schools, it's probably all of that, plus teachers unions. But if they could concentrate on that one thing and just make this agreement, we're going to save the next generation of Black kids, but we're going to save everybody who's in that situation at the same time. But we're going to do it because it's right, for reparations, et cetera. If you do it that way, then the Black people who would be benefiting, at least next generation, because it wouldn't be so useful for the current people, but the people who are part of that would be part of something pretty great.
Jessica's here. Hello to you. Archangel, great to see you. Sergeant Steele. That's a cool name. Whenever you analyze a video like this, I always enjoy your obstinate gum chewing. Thank you. So you see his great scheme is to, by way of the federal government, force white Americans, because he knows that the majority, or at least he believes, I don't know for sure, you'll have to look at the data for yourself, the ear is against the door, that the vast majority of tax dollars are produced by the founding stock of the United States. And so if you just pilfer those tax dollars, well, then it's almost all from them. Yeah, it's going to be some from other groups, but it's mostly from white people. And so keep thinking reparations here. And then we take that giant sum of money that, think of all the things that it could go to, right? For the good of everyone in society, right? But no, we're going to just pilfer it. And we're going to say, we're going to put it to the entire generation and thereafter of Blacks, for whatever, I don't know if he's thinking 2 generations or whatever of them, so that they have the most sterling education possible. But he tacks in there anybody else who's in that situation. So what he's saying is, well, if there's some white people, or if there are some Hispanic people, or if there are some Asian people that also are so poor and we let them in, then it's not totally a white being fleeced for Black people scenario, even though it is. If it's 98% Black kids that get the best education in the world, then, and again, where's that money coming from, and who's having to do without it, and all and on and on, trying to go quickly with this. But if we do that, then we will have paid back the Black race. Notice how he's a millionaire, lives in a really nice place. But so that means he holds on to his money. He makes wise investments, but he will happily villainy signal your dollars into oblivion.
So something I think is important as the civil rights movement. Now, the civil rights movement didn't work because only Black people were protesting, right? It required a lot of white friends. So this is the perfect situation. But if we focus on how do you transfer money, I feel as if all those committees that are being formed, to study it, that's how white people make a problem go away.
Blaming white people again.
Like I hate to tell you, that's what's going on.
Look. Look at Hotep Jesus. He's like, yep, you got it. White people just making the problem go away.
But that is nothing but to make the problem go away. Like everybody who has any experience in a organization, in a company, if you want to make it go away, just say you got to study it, form a group.
California was just studying it, right? They put together panels. And by the way, on these panels, it's not all white people. It's all anti-white, but it's definitely not all white people. And what did they just conclude in California? What was the recommendation? 3 million a black person or something like this? I wouldn't call that making the problem go away.
Right. That'll make it go away.
Yeah.
And you could guarantee that they would come up with something so unpopular with the public that it couldn't possibly work. Mm. So, the committee is really it's a fake out. But if everybody.
Yep. If you go to the public and you say, hey, we're going to take from you, give to them, that's too obvious. We have to, as anti-whites, we have to really be cunning, devious in the way we steal this from white people. That's what this guy's saying.
Focus on education.
And again, he's not unique. This is your typical rabid, individualist, anti-white, white person. So for those who want to make this about race rather than about anti-white, and those are combating anti-whiteism, well then, no wonder they concluded he was on their side.
Education, you could say, let's call it reparations. We'll put more money into it than we ever would have done if it was just about education. Yeah. Let's make it like the one thing we can agree on, save the next generation.
Yeah. I have to agree on the education tip. I look at reparations from a very selfish perspective. In long-term perspective, I don't want money. I want tax exemption for a really long time. That's what I would personally ask for.
What? I missed that. Tax exemption is money, dipshit. Wait, tax exemption. Hold on, I'm curious.
Tax exemption in a form of reparations?
From tax exemptions from income tax?
All tax. Corporate tax and income tax. If I own a company and I'm the majority owner of that company.
Okay. What a surprise. So this is already happening, but of course the ear is against the door. Please go out there and look for yourself to see if these programs already exist for non-white business owners to have tax forgiveness, loan forgiveness, grants, and things like this. Just look into it for yourself. If it's there, then you can be horrified by it. And if it's not, then no white guilt, got it wrong. But what happens when you give a business owner tax exemption? That's free money. What happens when you give them grants? What happens when you forgive loans from the federal government? The federal government doesn't make money. It takes yours. Remember, those business owners put the other business owners out of business because you can't compete if you're in business when you have to pay taxes. It's not only the taxes themselves, but it's all the bureaucracy and it's all your time as a small business owner that has to go into ensuring, and let me tell you, it's a shit ton of time and number crunching, ensuring that you are right with the IRS because they ruin lives and everybody knows it. We see it every time. So when you have one business owner here, might have the best idea, might serve the community the best in any number of widgets or services that you buy, that Black people out there have to buy, services they have to use. When that business owner who might produce the best widget and service can't compete with the non-white business owner because the non-white business owner is just got money to spend like there's no tomorrow and time to spend like there's no tomorrow, the white business owner in this case simply goes out of business. What else does it do when it comes to economics? It disincentivizes investing in white business owners and ideas by white inventors and the like. And the investment, but it also disincentivizes those people from getting involved, from inventing things, from starting businesses. Hey, I know the best way to serve a burger now. I know there's a better way to serve a burger now than it's been ever before. I got it in my head and it will work. But you know what? I can't even get started because I'm going to have to pay taxes. I'm going to have to pay back my loans. I'm going to have to spend all the time preparing taxes, etc. And this guy's acting like, well, no, it's not money. You're not giving me any money. What are sales called, dumbass?
Company, I want corporate tax removed as well.
Now, do you think that that's like a form of an idea that you could get enough agreement on?
Yes.
You do?
Well, the reason why I think so is because now you're going to have other groups, because let's be honest, everybody hates the IRS. So they're going to go, oh, well, maybe there's a way I can get myself exempt. Maybe Irish or the Italians can say, well, we want reparations too. And you might get Italians and Irish and
No, that's not the outcome of it. Gosh.
A whole bunch of other people saying, well, look, I got an ancestor who came over in Ellis Island or something, and I can get white people on board.
If your plan depends on the Irish getting reparations, I see a problem.
Do you?
I don't think the reparation thing is going to extend too far out of maybe Native Americans and Black Americans. But
so he wants to give reparations also to American Indians. We don't say Native Americans. Celtic says, Celtic Jim, I don't own a business, but I make commission on sales though, which you have to pay taxes on. Artificer says no mention of the preferential point system in awarding government contracts. Precisely.
But I like your optimism. Maybe we'll all get reparations. Lower the tax.
So, how do you think reparations looks? You mentioned education. Are we talking about transferring funds to some group who then manages homeschooling and then designing a good curriculum around that?
I think job one is breaking the teachers' unions. I think that's the number one thing that Black America needs. Okay. And it's one thing that you could get conservatives to sign on to. Now, you could also test it. You could also say, we don't know if this is the best idea. Let's just agree that we'll test it in this area, get some more free market stuff, see what happens.
I like that.
And it won't be free market because he's an anti-white. That's for conservative-minded white people. They hear it's like throwing a dog treat in front of a dog, a really hungry one. That's all it is there. Why won't it be a free market scenario? I'm not saying I support teachers unions, but the reason it won't be a free market scenario is because he just told you it won't be. Adams just told you he's going to take your money in tax dollars and give it to Black people so that they can pay for the best schools. They can put their kids in the best schools. They were given, and people of all different races were given schools all over the country. That's already happened. We already have the outcome.
We're going to address your statement next, but first I want to say this is pay to play.
We're going to address the statement next. Are they loud enough? I don't think I can turn them up. Are they loud enough for everybody? And if you have questions or comments, you have suggestions, or you disagree with something I'm saying, let me know. Tag me or financially gift on the aforementioned sites.
People, so if you want to participate in this conversation respectfully, go ahead, hit the super chat. We got people tuned in over on Rumble. We're Hotep TV on Rumble, so if you want to subscribe on Rumble, they're over there. I see you, Jimmy Das Hotep, appreciate you. So we're also on Rumble at Hotep TV. So let's talk about your statement. You began this conversation and called yourself an energy monster. Now,
all right, Celtic Jim, not saying the same tax on sales for the business owner though. Yeah, I get it. So at the very beginning, he just said, Adam said, as I recall, that maybe we should go back and listen to that. He just said that he's a energy monster, what Hotep Jesus just said. And that was the reason for saying it. And he said he knows the price, saying what? That you should stay away from Black people. He knows the price of free speech. That was another reason why he said that.
When I first saw your statement, I classified it as trolling. Some people may call it clout chasing. Maybe you're classifying this as being an energy monster or provocateur. What is the goal of your statement? Was it to get people energetically charged up?
Well, is that what you call trolling? Getting
sometimes
people just riled up?
It can be construed as that sometimes.
Well, I'll tell you a little secret about me. I never do something for one reason. So I wouldn't do it just for laughs.
Right.
I wouldn't do it just for clout.
Mm-hmm.
I certainly wouldn't do it for financial reasons. I don't know if you've heard, but the Dilbert's being canceled all over the country, and it's CNN is canceling me. I think TMZ was canceling me just before I got on. I think the biggest newspaper that carries me has already decided to cancel. I would be surprised if I'm in business a few days from now. So here's the things you can know it isn't. I wouldn't do it just for laughs. I mean, it isn't that funny. It's pretty funny, but it isn't that funny. I wouldn't do it for money. I wouldn't do it for reputation. Why would I do it? Well, that's a question. Why would I do it?
I think you want to have the conversation.
Can you think of any other reason I would do it?
I think you wanted to have. I think you wanted to create room for the conversation.
I discovered that the price of free speech is really high, and there are only a few people willing to pay it. So I decided to pay it so that I could extend the conversation to something that everybody needs to hear. So let me set it up. You might want to play the quote first. Do you want to play the clip first or something to set it up?
Sure. Let me.
No. So the clip will be provocative, and then I'll give you the context. Now, I should say, while we're waiting to listen to this, that all day long people were very mad at me. That's why the cancellations. But to the best of my knowledge, nobody's disagreed with the point I made. And I keep asking if they disagree with the point, and they sort of avoid that question. There's some.
So, what's the point? The point is that even in anti-white circles, I mean, you see it from non-white anti-whites as well, black anti-whites as well, that they don't want to live in an area with extremely high crime. And I mean, you heard, what was it, Jesse Jackson, I think, way back in the 90s, I think it was, or even 80s, it's a long time, where he said he's walking down the street, I think it was in DC, heard footsteps behind him, got nervous, turned around, and then saw it was a couple of white guys and felt relieved. And he was upset with that. So recognizing that certain areas are violent and that certain groups of people have higher crime rates, irrespective of the reason. Irrespective, you could say it's because of one thing, and an anti-white would say it's because of something else. They still, anti-whites are able to say, of all races, this area and this group has higher crime rates, and so I'm not going to live there. They'll just vote for you to live there. They think that's the kind of environment that you should be in. That's what he believes. So when he's saying nobody is disagreeing with me, that's what he's talking about. In anti-white circles, they're able to talk about this. The question is, why is it like that? And they're going to give you, as anti-whites, something that you might expect. It's white people's fault. He's going to specifically say that systemic racism has created fewer educational opportunities for blacks. White people, therefore, have created fewer educational opportunities for blacks. That's why his remedy, even prior to his show the other day, was more education for black people. That's why he talked about education and why education is available out there and in the previous show. So that's where he's coming from. This isn't as I say, I'll say it again. He's not suddenly feeling the sting of, and that's how I think some content creators, to try to save face, you're going to see, well, he told the truth, and therefore he got canceled, and therefore he's now making apologies and covering up. But we really know what he means. Are you really going to keep listening to somebody that believes the inverse of what the real Scott Adams is?
Question about the data, which I agree with. The questionability.
Oh,
the question.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I want to start off by thanking me. I want to thank everybody in my community who has supported me, and I have supported them, and we have worked together. I want to give all my thanks out as I receive this award today. Remember what I said? What was going to be the fulcrum? Whether or not the study was legitimate. You can look back just on Sunday. You probably remember. You just heard him say that. The questionability of the study. Oh my God.
This of the data. I think that's a good point.
The questionableness
if they
of the
disagree with the
data.
point, and they sort of avoid that question. There is some question about the data, which I agree with. The questionableness of the data. I think that's a good point.
Can you feel it?
Yes, we can talk about the data. Absolutely. I'm trying to find the right clip because a lot of them are long and
Heidi
they're mostly
says,
like 2 minutes and 18 seconds.
I know you were 100% right.
All right, let's just grab this one. And then we'll put it on your screen. Give me a second. People will be on your screen in just a moment. Right now on your screen.
Hurry up.
You'll see the video right.
We're trying to wrap it up.
And then I'll release the audio, and then we'll be playing this. Hold on one second.
All right.
So if nearly half of all blacks are not okay with white people, according to this poll, not according to me, according to this poll, that's a hate group. That's a hate group. And I don't want to have anything to do with them. And I would say, based on the current way things are going, the best advice I would give to white people is to get the hell away from black people. Just get the fuck away. Wherever you have to go, just get away.
Just get away.
There's no fixing this.
All right, so I couldn't hear the clip, but
it's still going.
Right, this can't be fixed.
Do you want me to play the whole thing?
Escape. So that's what I did.
No,
I went to a neighborhood.
Whatever you think.
That's good.
Stop it.
That's good. So you said get away.
So here's the context.
Okay.
This is the sort of thing that, you owe the world, not you, I owe the world a clarification.
Okay.
Clarification is this. I'm opposed to any form of discrimination against individuals. Not your neighbor, not the person applying for a job, marry who you want, date who you want, friends who you want.
And he said that he's not being dishonest. In the previous video, he wasn't talking about individuals. He said plenty of black people out there have education, and of course the people that he's going to tolerate and promote and live among and etc.
Yeah, I have no opinion on that, except everybody should be treated as individuals, period. And from a constitutional legal sense, everybody has to be treated the same, period. So those things I think everybody agrees on.
Yeah.
The second thing I said that was controversial, and I think some of the context got lost, is that
oh my God, I love being this right. I'm gonna surf on the hood of my car. I'm gonna get in my car and I'm gonna put it in drive. I'm gonna set the idle so that it rolls along about 3, 4, 5 miles an hour, and I'm gonna get out while it's riding and I'm gonna surf it to celebrate us.
if you're not in a constitutional legal sense and you're not talking to an individual, then for career maximization or life maximization, you might want to avoid people you think have a bad opinion of you. I'll give you some examples.
Okay, so here's the context. In a nutshell, it's that what he's saying is when he was speaking to white people and saying, stay the F away from black people, he's saying that do not go places where your environment is going to not benefit you. He's a radical individualist. That's what he was believing before. This is not some new kind of an excuse. The issue is that for white people, there are no environments that benefit us, especially white males. The white females, you can still get on your back and still throw your legs open for anti-whites of every race. You can still occasionally get your, or not occasionally, but less and less is the case. You can still get your promotions. You can still get the job on the basis of being a female. But white guys, there's no place that we can go where the environment can favor us, because the whole machinery of Western civilization will come down on that environment and destroy it to dust.
If a man said to me, I've got a job offer, 2 places. One of them, it's a lot of men work there and I'm a man. And then another one where it seems like all the executives are women. So I got a suspicion that they wouldn't want to promote a man. So they asked my opinion. What would I say? I say, well, you don't know what all those women think. And certainly you shouldn't judge all of the women at this company by that pattern. But if your intuition is that they might not favor you as much as this other company, I would go where the discrimination worked in my favor.
So where does discrimination work in your favor for a white man? Scott Adams is a very bright guy. He's been giving his opinion through his comic strip and his philanthropy for decades. He's been online sharing his opinions, many, who knows how many thousands and thousands of hours of sharing his opinion. And not once, as far as I know, because it would have been front page news, bigger than this, has he said that, hey, there's no environment where white guys are favored. None. He doesn't care. He's not trying to remedy black people. He's not trying, he hates white people. Clearly he hates us, but he's not trying to really help black people. He's just trying to help Scott Adams as an anti-white, rabid, individualist.
Here's another example. If a young Black person came to me and said, give me some life advice, I would say, don't go where you have the lowest risk, the lowest chance of succeeding. Go where you have the best chance.
And where's his lowest chance of succeeding? Well, if there is such a thing that white people produce, it just kind of comes off of us as a scent, systemic racism, then there's no place he can go. None.
Best chance at the moment is you stay in school and try to get a job in a big Fortune 500 company that's trying to balance out their diversity.
So he's well aware. Can you believe when you actually witness an anti-white person, and in this case it's a white anti-white, and you hear them actually flatly, openly, blatantly talking about, hey, go the places where you're going to get benefited because they're discriminating against white people. He doesn't have to worry about it because he's got the money to get away from it. But just go out there where they're actively discriminating against white people. He just said that.
A very good goal. But that would put you at the top of the list, and you would automatically be, above all the white people applying for the same job if you have, similar qualifications. In the real world, people tend to have similar qualifications. I think people imagine that you can really tell who the good employee is going to be. Like, if you've ever hired, you can't do that. Nobody really knows. Like, within a similar band, you just don't.
So what he's trying to do with this is sort of like an oblique argument or tangential, sort of like a parallel argument that he keeps with him. People will do this all the time. They'll make a point and they'll be talking about, let's just say A. And then while they're talking about A, they'll strike an idea that's within A, but it doesn't need to be talked about. But it's something that they've referred to so many times that they hop over to this other train of this other train of thought, we could say, this other rail line of thought, and they'll make an argument that is ill-fitting. It makes no sense, and then they go back to A. It's not supportive, or it's not to represent opposition or anything like that. So what he did just there is he revealed that he has this thought and argument about how discriminating against white people is okay, because basically everybody in the real world has the same training, the same ability. And so since you can't know if that white guy who has maybe the higher test scores and who has the more history working in that field, or maybe has awards in the field, you can't really know whether or not he's going to be better. So hiring the non-white person instead, you got just as good of a chance. This is an argument that he's used elsewhere. You have to be able to identify. If you can't, then just listen to me and I'll explain it for you. You have to be able to identify these sorts of things when you're hearing people share what's going through their mind.
So you're kind of guessing. Anyway, so that would be an example where a Black person should go where they have the biggest career advantage, which is, they would be discriminated
everywhere.
If you were a Black man and asked me for advice, and you said, should I go work for a company in Cleveland, or go somewhere where, not Cleveland, I guess, where there's a higher white percentage, which would be your competitive advantage? If you go to
everywhere, you have a competitive advantage. It doesn't matter how white, the more white a company is, the more likely, if you're non-white, to be hired there to satisfy the diversity quotas so that the state government doesn't come after you. More importantly, the people within the own company who are functioning within an anti-white narrative with an anti-white morality that sees it as immoral to not hire the non-white guy, even if he doesn't have the same test scores and history and background, etc., in the field. There's nowhere, but he's grasping here for where might it not behoove a Black person to go and try to apply for a job. It's nonsense.
Cleveland is 53% Black, the city is. So let's say you work for a company in Cleveland, presumably you would be competing against a lot of other Black people with similar qualifications. But if you go to another place where there are fewer Black people applying for the same jobs, you go to the top of the white pile automatically, because diversity is something every company wants, and they should. Right? I'm in favor of this.
Oh, so he's just saying it's what every company wants, and they should want it. The should want it is the anti-white morality. The law of the land would state, if read plainly, in the absence of these anti-white laws that have been passed, specifically affirmative action, the law states plainly that you can't discriminate on the basis of race, etc. But what overrules the law and the rules every time? The moral imperative. In this case, it's the anti-white moral imperative. Heidi says, this is one of the things I was so ticked off about. I'm glad you see all of this. Well, thank you so much. Rory says, my insurers have just increased the insurance premium on my commercial property. I'm fighting it, but these insurance companies are demons. Is it because you're white?
By the way, I'm in favor of, and have always been in favor of, affirmative action.
So he's in favor of the law that discriminates on the basis of race. That's my interpretation of it. Maybe ask a lawyer.
But I think you have to have a conversation at some point about how to phase it out. Because once things get close, but before everything is exactly equal, you end up having more bad will than positive benefit.
Yeah.
It's like you gotta be.
Yeah, so now the conversation, he was just talking about putting seating panels to address an issue and how panels just make things go away. So he's now talking about having a panel, a conversation about what you do with affirmative action. Now that you have so many non-white people who are the executives of the companies, who are, etc. At some point, we should probably revisit this radical discrimination against white people on the basis of race. We should probably seat a panel.
Careful when you get that close. So I think we're in the neighborhood where we should have the conversation about, is it better for everybody to phase it out, or is there some places it's better to keep it? So likewise,
Wow.
if you are a white man in America and you're watching the news and you're seeing this thing called CRT, critical race theory, you're seeing DEI and ESG, all three-letter things that have in common, trying to reach some kind of equity.
DIE. Don't let them turn it around like Biospirit of the West said. DIE. Diversity, inclusivity, equity.
Racial balancing kind of situation. Now, I'll ask you this question because maybe you can educate me. My understanding is that they all have at the base of their narrative that white people, mostly white men, have created a situation and continue to perpetuate one that's bad for Black people. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
So what would be the most natural way you would feel if the narrative from the media...
That's a leading statement that he just made. And let me also say, as I was saying earlier, anti-whites of all races are able to say to each other that there are groups out there that are more violent than others, and their areas where they have a higher population are more violent. They'll disagree about what the cause of that is. They'll say, of course, they'll blame white people, but let's listen here.
From college, from high school, your teachers, your parents, if the media was very, let's say, cohesive, and it said white people are the problem, do you think that would affect how Black people thought about white people?
Yes.
Would it have any effect?
Yes.
And assuming it's a negative effect, would it be reasonable for somebody to say, wait, there's this group of people, I don't have any problem with any individual, and I don't want to change the Constitution, right? Everybody's got to be treated equally. But it's a little bit smarter for me to stay away from a group who has been brainwashed to dislike me exactly. Like me exactly.
So he's sour over being a rabid individualist, anti-white, his whole life. And now some of what he's created is negatively affecting him. I wonder what it is in his personal life. I wonder what he's really angry about. I wonder how he's being undermined because he's white.
Exactly. I'm a rich white guy in America. I'm very much right in the center of those crosshairs. Now, does that mean that I think everybody should avoid their neighbor? No. Does that mean I'm never going to talk to a Black person? No. Does that mean I won't hire Black people? No. Doesn't mean any of that. And also,
so back to his statement about white people get the F away from Blacks. I was 100% right. Once again,
I assume people know hyperbole when they see it, right? When I say stay away from Black people, anybody who thought that was like a literal, like, yeah, all Black people, if you see one coming, run. Like, There's a.
He's laughing at you. He's laughing at the white people out there that took him literally. Gosh.
Test I like to give for fake news, where you just say the thing that's in the news, and then you follow it with the words, really? Really? Do you think that happened? Do you think that I went on, a live stream and said, stay away from black people, every one of them, there's no exceptions, whatever you do, just ask yourself.
He totally gave exceptions the entire time. It came to the poll itself. It came to individuals. He's a radical anti-white. He's been that way his whole life, it seems. And he hasn't gotten enough. He hasn't prospered enough. He's been undermined, he believes, in some ways for being white as well. And he's essentially saying, I've done all of this. Why should I be included? He had a little tantrum. He blew off a little steam, but it wasn't his a genuine change of heart or anything of this nature. More importantly, the change, what seemed like the change of heart to some that he's now laughing at, which is his genuine opinion from the past. That's why he lives in the good neighborhood. Remember, that's why he lives away from crime-ridden areas. That was his opinion already. He's laughing at you right now if you thought that he was being honest about stay away from all black people. What he was really saying, if anything, two things. It was a get attention, get my name out there, get people talking about me. Said he was an energy monster, make me the center of attention, radical individualist, another type of character that you never want to follow. And the second thing is, I'm assuming at this point that he is angry over some sort of slights, some sort of undermining of his wealth, of his privilege as a radical individualist, because he's white. There needs to be, for somebody like him, there needs to be some sort of get out of white jail card. Then he would be fine with it.
Was there any thinking behind it? Yeah, was there maybe a why to that you haven't heard yet? If you heard it in context, would you disagree with it? And the answer is, I haven't seen anybody disagree. So
the disagreement is the violence. As I said, third time now, they already agree on that. Just the cause. They're going to blame you.
I have seen disagreement. I don't see anybody disagreeing with you should avoid any groups of people who are likely to have negative opinions about you on average. What I saw a lot of disagreement on, and I agree with this criticism, is that the Rasmussen poll that I was looking at, the original thing that started it, said that something like close to half of all Black Americans who were polled were unwilling to say that it's, quote, okay to be white. Now, I heard you criticizing that, and your criticisms were right on. The nature of the question is that it will be interpreted differently by people, and maybe they're not even answering the same question as the other people in their minds. So I would agree that the data is not good. But honestly,
and that is exactly what I said to you all at the beginning of the gathering covering this, that what's important here, what's relevant here, and this is one of the ways, one of his sort of exits, aside from how good or strong or what have you the poll, or weak the poll is how people interpret the question. What does it mean for them exactly? That gives you an infinite amount of wiggle room. An infinite amount of wiggle room.
Honestly, anybody who's watched me for a while knows that my primary act, at least on social media and live stream, is doubting polls, doubting experts, doubting the science, and doubting any leadership or government person. Now, there's a 4chan hoax that all of my pandemic opinions are the opposite of what they were. So there's a version of me online that's the opposite of just said, but that's a 4chan hoax. Anyway, so I forgot what I was saying.
Okay, so let's break that down. I do agree on the separation of people part, right? As a former extreme Black nationalist, I even still today tell Black people, if you want to do better, you could work together and we can pull ourselves out of this problem by group economics, right? Is one thing you'll hear consistently throughout Black nationalist conversations. But I want
the conversation, and this is the kind of thing that, white nationalists out there, this is the kind of thing that they salivate over. They're like, let's get together with the Black nationalists and the Asian and Hispanic nationalists, and we'll just go our different ways. Stop thinking like children. You're not any representative of any race. You don't speak for any race. You're not going to be able to promulgate such a view or opinion. There is this poor soul right here, Hotep Jesus, isn't going to be able to get but the smallest number of Black people interested in what he's trying to say. Because for sake, look at all the plunder and lust and reward for being in the West as a non-white person. Hotep Jesus didn't disagree that you can go anywhere in America as a Black person and benefit from diversity programs, universities, jobs, etc. No one's given that up. That's why we have to destroy anti-whiteism. We have to get together and we have to destroy it. If you want to better, if Hotep Jesus wants to better the Black people, Black community, let's just take him at his face value that it is. He wants to benefit Black people. The only way that he can actually effectuate that is to destroy anti-whiteism. That's going to rob him of like his tax exempt status that he wants for being Black, that a white country would have to give to him. That's going to rob non-white people out there and victim group people out there of their ability to get jobs and promotions, etc., as a consequence of white people being discriminated against. So that's a really uphill battle for a lot of those folks. At the same time, they are all suffering. We are all suffering the white erasure of norms and laws and codes, etc., in the West that made Western countries what they were. As those things are erased, everything gets much worse. And for everyone, white erased. And so that's the only thing he could actually do. And why would that benefit the Black community? Well, they'll want to keep things like law and order. They want to keep things like freedom of speech. They want to keep things like all of the amendments, etc. They want to keep those things that make a Western, and the norms, the things that aren't written down, the norms in the West, the expectations of behavior in the West, they get to keep all of those things. And then you can go further into what like the conservatives would, white conservatives would want to talk about, and how it would in fact strengthen the Black family. If Black people, like Sharika was telling us, if they weren't able to say, well, I disappeared for a couple of days because the white man is so awful, and if you don't stick with me, then you're a traitor to the Black race. They would not be able to say that anymore if anti-whiteism was defeated. So that's the only way to benefit all peoples.
I want to come back to the point of your hyperbole. I understood when I first heard it. You saw me crack up. I knew it was hyperbole. I knew what you were doing, but I got to tell you, the optics were dangerous, Scott. The optics of it, and I want to know
what makes it dangerous. The anti-white narrative, anti-whiteism dominating society.
What you think about this, because you're a huge personality. You have a ton of history behind you, your brand, Dilbert, and what you say.
Bob says, if you recall, that's where this Hotep Jesus came on the scene during blood sports, invited by the alt-right. I don't recall him. Was he in debates? It's the silliest thing, I have to say. One of the silliest things in my life is when I was a much younger man, watching adults who claimed to be concerned or white sympathetic, and they would act like they were representatives of the white race, and that if they met with and shook hands with and agreed on X, Y, or Z with the representatives of other races, then we were going somewhere. And I was like, just get in your Toyota and shut the fuck up. You have a brain of a child. What has happened to the white race? You have the brain of a child. Why does anybody listen to you?
As you can see, affects the fabric of America. It's going to send ripples through the culture.
And here's where we started earlier.
I think in some ways you understand that some people are going to know you're being hyperbolic, but you also know it's going to trigger a lot of people. You don't think what you chose to do was irresponsible?
Irresponsible. The language of morals. Here's Hotep Jesus proving me right, sentence after sentence as well.
There's a good question. Was it irresponsible? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask it this way.
Was he just, what just happened there?
Irresponsible?
Oh, there's a good question. Was it irresponsible?
Does he have a direct line with heaven? Who's he talking to? He's like, dear Lord, strike this white man down. Bolt of lightning while we're live. Take him out. I'll have the highest ratings ever.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask it this way. There was a purpose to it. If you didn't know the purpose to it, it would look that way. So anybody who didn't know why I did it, that would be a reasonable interpretation. Yes. But if you knew why I did it, which is to broaden this conversation, because it's sort of, until you can talk honestly about any of the race.
No, that's not what he did. He wasn't trying to, I mean, that's like, he's trying to rally people to his side. And we've talked about this sort of thing before. I had a purpose. I was trying to broaden the conversation. No, he had a tantrum. That's what he had. He had a tantrum. He admitted to something he already knew his whole life and is widely known in anti-white circles. Widely known. I mean, this is another thing where you have these cult nats, ant nats that are saying, whoa, now it's finally being talked about how awful this other race is. No, they already talk. That's why they don't live there, dumbass. They already talk about that. They just blame it on you. He was throwing a tantrum, and who knows what it is. Maybe he's got the same frustrations that I do trying to grow our community. Maybe he's watched his numbers stagnate at whatever they are. I mean, I'm colossal times, many times larger than we have here, but he's watching them not moving. He's thinking, I'm putting out great content. He's looking out there at competitors. Maybe there are also things in more intimate circles in his environment, and anti-white people, they don't have it as good as they used to. They really don't have it as good as they used to. They really used to be, and you can look to like Bill and Hillary Clinton. They're like a great example of white people who think that they're going to have 300-foot, 500-foot statues made to them by non-white people, and they're just going to pray to them and worship them for all that they did for them, aggrandize them into eternity. Well, that's not how it works. Nobody ever builds, and you can look at this when it comes to the United States or any other Western country. You can look at these individuals, white people, who are actively anti-white, vehemently anti-white, like the Scott Adams is demonstrating here. And non-white anti-white people are going to view people like Scott Adams as traitors. They're not going to look at it. They'll say, yeah, you're one of our allies, but they're going to view them as a traitor to the white people they're leaving behind, a traitor to the country that the founding stock created, the civilization that same group of Western people creates everywhere they go. They'll view them as a traitor, and statues are never made to traitors. And so it could be any number of things. It could have been building up for a while for Scott Adams. And then finally, he sees this poll come out, and he has a tantrum about it. Now he wants to claim that I was just trying to broaden the conversation. Not because he's trying to, I believe he knew that he would lose contracts with different newspapers and the like, and that he's got FU money and he doesn't really care. And probably doesn't want to lose all of them, but probably doesn't care so much. He felt like he had room to throw a tantrum, just like when you have an employee that doesn't want to work there anymore. They don't need to work for you anymore. And they start taking chances. They're like, whoa, just like 15 minutes late from lunch. Where were you? I don't know. I just fell asleep in the car, whatever. And you know they wouldn't be doing that when they needed that job, when they really wanted to be there. That's what's happening with Scott Adams.
Stuff. How could you possibly do anything? How could you possibly do it?
Is he still praying to God to strike Scott Adams down?
Yeah. So the minimum is somebody needs to get in trouble by like moving the envelope. So here's what I want to say. In a world in which the narrative is that white people are the basis of the problem of not only past discrimination, but perpetuating ongoing systemic racism, there's only one outcome.
Well, wait a second. Did he just prove me right about the tantrum? Holy it. He just proved me right about it being a tantrum. He is in favor of the narrative. that there exists such a thing as systemic racism that white people perpetuate. Now he is revealing that, hey, I had to say this. I just started a conversation about this problem of saying that there's systemic racism that white people perpetuate. That is a admission to the fact that he is personally having trouble, maybe in business, maybe his audience numbers, maybe whatever. God.
For that, which is white people are going to want to get away from that. So I would broaden the conversation to say it's not about black people, it's about woke people too. So if you're concerned about the woke taking you down, you want to stay away from woke people. I'll give you an analogy.
Well, he is struggling here. He has just revealed it, and you all know that now. He just revealed that he was throwing a tantrum, and now he just took it another step further in the revelation about woke people. So he's a full-time, his whole life supporter of the idea, anti-whiteism, that there's this systemic racism. And when that benefited him over his life, saying that and upholding that position as a radical individualist, he loved it and he employed it and he promulgated it. And he excluded white people who he should have been making recommendations for or should have hired. And he excluded white or more white, maybe orphanages or whatever, so that he could put his money, villainy signaling, anti-whiteism everywhere he goes, and personally benefit from it. Now, however, this systemic racism out there that he's supported his whole life, that it exists, is somehow in some ways undermining him. So he threw a tantrum about it. He finally, it strikes me that this has been probably a problem for a handful or more of years for him, suffering the consequences of the ideology that he endorsed as it incrementally the society gets increasingly anti-white and sacrifices the white anti-whites, because that's part of the ideology. He's seeing that happen to him and he's thinking, Jesus, this is hurting me now. Then sees this poll and throws a tantrum. God.
Do you remember the Pence rule, Mike Pence? He had a rule that he wouldn't go to lunch or dinner with a woman who was not his wife unless his wife came along.
Oh, yes.
And people mocked it because it's so backwards, etc. But
that's true, because he's a bitch. Mike Pence is a bitch, and he's submissive to women. You can't have a leader who's submissive to women. Give me a break.
Time went by, you realize the wisdom of it. If you don't put yourself in a system.
In fact, you tell her to sit in the car and wait for you. If that's the kind of attitude she expects from you, you say, you just sit in the car and wait. I'm going in to eat.
In a temptation, you won't get tempted. And then secondly, there was a lot of Me Too business going on. So most of the Me Too's presumably are real, but there's an alarming percentage that are not. So if you're not alone with a woman in the first place, you can't get a false accusation. So we're reaching a point where if you follow the money, it sort of makes sense.
You can have that opinion about protecting yourself. Lord knows that I have to do it with all these psychos who want to make lies every which way without being submissive to a woman.
To make false accusations. It's like it's starting to become a monetary strategy. And you would expect that somebody's going to pick up on that. So, in a world in which people are learning that white people are bad, it doesn't seem crazy that white people would want to avoid.
I so nailed his ass. I so nailed that. God damn it. Man, I'm good. I so nailed his ass to the fucking wall. He 100% is revealing right here, every sentence that comes out of his mouth, that, well, now this anti-whiteism is hurting me. Now it's hurting me. And so I just threw a tantrum. And now I have to deal with this. Now I got to say it's about expanding the conversation. So anti-whiteism is good. Anti-whiteism is totally good. I'm Scott Adams right now. Anti-whiteism is totally good. It's great. It's great. Just watch me spend my money on it and get tenfold back. Watch me spend my money on it and get praised in newspapers across the country. Watch me spend my money on it and watch my sub counts go through the roof as the anti-whites trick that algorithm to bring people over to watching me, no matter how fucking boring I am on my live streams. I love it. Love the anti-whiteism. But wait a second. Slowly getting worse for me. It's slowly starting to hurt me. And y'all wonder, like, when is that going to happen? When are all these white people who are part of this anti-white superstructure, when are they going to start getting eaten alive by the ideology that they have forced upon us and the consequences of the ideology that they have forced upon us? Well, my friends, increasingly, it's happening. Scott Adams won't be the first. Let that be the big lesson. The two big lessons, what I'm saying right now and the fact that Jason's right once again. That this guy right here admitted that I was right, and now he's revealing that I'm right again in my speculation. That he's motivated out of a tantrum because that ideology that used to benefit him so much, not so much anymore. Imagine if you had an investment, or they talk about going back to the well in sports. You go back to that play that keeps working, or you have an investment that you keep putting money on, keeps paying you back. Year upon year upon year, you've relied upon it. Like athletes, all professional athletes, in my opinion, of course, are using performance-enhancing drugs. I don't have any inside information or anything like that. But every now and again, you see a professional athlete get caught for using a performance-enhancing drug. How does that happen? Especially when it's an old drug. Well, the way it happens is they got used to going to that well, that investment over and over, and it works. Back again, back again. I get more fame. I get more money. I get stronger. I get faster. My comic gets run in more newspapers and more money. My account just keeps ticking up like running the national debt up, except the other direction. It's going all into my bank account. But all of a sudden now, it's not working so much. He's going back to the well, and sometimes it's empty. And sometimes he even gets ran off by snakes around the well. That's what's happening with this clown. What a piece of shit.
That the entire environment. Now, but we glossed over the most important question. The most important question is, am I batshit crazy for believing the Rasmussen poll? And I would like to ask your opinion, based on your years of living, what percent of Black Americans do you think have I'll just say a negative opinion of white people?
Let him consult Jesus or whoever. Who does Hotep Jesus pray to? He's going to suddenly go, are you hit by lightning yet, Scott? Yeah, it's true. Heidi, she was making comments under Scott Adams' video, and he or somebody works for him, just deleting them, every single one. Let's see what he says, Hotep Jesus.
What's your best guess?
So we talked about this on Hotep's Been Told You Thursday. This is our very lighthearted comedy show we do every Thursday, 8 p.m. with Uncle Hotep. And this question is actually bifurcated, okay? Or the answer, I should say, the solution. There's a conscious perception of white people. There's a subconscious perception of white people, okay?
Sure.
The conscious perception sometimes is negative, but the subconscious perspective is very positive.
Bullshit. My God. The subconscious, as we've talked about, is running it. I don't know exactly how he's defining it. I would have to know, but there is no very positive opinion about white people anywhere, not in the minds of white people, not in the minds of Black people, in my opinion, the majority of people of all races. That is what anti-whiteism is.
For example, if you ever read the book, The Autobiography of Malcolm X, when he was Detroit Red, he talks about how his social equity gained a lot of value when he came around with a white woman. Black people perceived him to be more popular or more valuable than what he was because he was walking around with a white woman.
Where was he perceived to be more valuable with a white woman?
We can also say the same thing about medical advice. Hoteps have said.
And what about his perception? What was the evidence that informed his perception? You can't accept these things at something like this at just face value.
Many things about health, but until a white man in a lab suit says it, the general Black population doesn't hop onto it. They need to see, and this is subconscious. This is part of what people might call systemic racism or white supremacy, where everything of authority has to come from a white man's face. So there's
that absolutely is not what's happening in the real world. If they could you imagine if that were true? They're like, well, you know what? We need these black people over here to take this vaccine. Let's find the nerdiest white guy that we can and send him out there to go have a conversation with them. I mean, are you kidding me? No, they sent rappers out, and he's talking now about sales, and it's like the equivalent of what he's saying is like having a 500-pound land whale say, I use this diet plan and you should too.
That subconscious perception. Then there's also the perception of, well, if Scott Adams could dance and he wore Timberland boots, well, we got to invite him to the cookout. So there's nuance there subconsciously.
I think what he's doing is he's making a stab at a really superficial view or superficial appreciation that if somebody shows up and they tell you, hey, don't put this string of Christmas lights on your tree near your curtains in your house because they're known to cause a fire, and that guy is wearing a fireman's outfit versus a guy who is some rambling guy that was just screaming walking down the road a moment ago. So that has nothing to do, that perception of education, of knowledge, of the subject under consideration has nothing to do with the races.
Okay. Where black people love white people.
That's
as long as they meet certain requisites. Then there's the conscious.
And so on the basis of that, he says equals racism. Because black people will look at a guy dressed as a doctor and they'll think he knows medicine, or a firefighter, he knows about what catches things on fire. That equals white people are evil. That's what racism means. A lot of sound thinking in anti-whiteism.
And the conscious is programmed in the subconscious from an early age. I was raised to hate white people, pretty much, from history, etc., etc., media, all these things.
Well, he's honest about that. He was raised to hate white people. We all are.
So to answer your question, I would have to say, I can't say for certain, but I would say the poll is probably closer to the truth. If we were to say that everybody was answering that question from the first person perspective, that roughly the majority of black folks think it's okay to be white. Whereas that other, I think it was maybe 47% or something like that, were unsure or said it's not okay to be white. Did that answer your question?
Gosh.
So pretty close to the Rasmussen number. Like anecdotally, that feels about right.
Yeah.
Too. So I got a bunch of input on Twitter, and it varied from a black man saying that personally 1% of the people he knew in his family and in the military. Apparently the military does a good job of evening stuff out there.
Of doing what? The military does a good job of what?
A man saying that personally 1% of the people he knew in his family and in the military. Apparently the military does a good job of evening stuff out there.
Evening stuff.
And then somebody else said it's at least 50%. A black man said that. And then other people have avoided the question. But let's say it's 50 or 20%, and you're making your personal decisions. You know, if 20% of the houses in the neighborhood that you were looking to buy a house were known neo-Nazis, would you say to yourself, well, it's only 20%? Like, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. It's only 20%. Well, you wouldn't, right?
So this is, I wish I could get, I wish God rained down money on people who are right. It's just like, there you go. Do you see the awkwardness in him explaining something that everyone can say in private, and they do say in private, even in the anti-white circles, even in the upper echelon of the anti-white circles. He's awkwardly trying to explain that publicly. Do you see that now? It's so clear. He's trying to soften it up some. He's like, come on, awkwardly if it were Nazis in your neighborhood, come on. Hotep Jesus doesn't live in one of these areas that have the high crime rates, or he lives a very different life than presents here.
Like you would make the obvious smart decision to go where, in all likelihood, you would be treated better. In all likelihood,
but is being a neo-Nazi equivalent to a black person saying it's not okay to be?
No.
Okay.
No. So black people can say that it's not okay to be alive, not okay to exist, not okay to project your existence into the world. And that is just off the table much better than a Nazi. Boy. Yeah, Scott Adams, he's your guy.
The larger point is, can you, as an individual, maximizing your own life, can you make decisions, or does it make sense to make decisions about going where you will probably be liked the most, even if you don't know?
Absolutely.
Right. So that's the only part that's equivalent. I'm not saying anybody's equivalent to a neo-Nazi.
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, he's got a good smile though, Scott Adams. He's got a good smile.
Yeah. But I think the bigger issue here is
give it up to his dentist.
Okay. And two groups of people have been particularly enraged, and we're going to exclude white liberals from this.
What?
Black Americans, and maybe the diasporas and the rest of the diaspora, maybe. And this neo-Nazi white nationalist crowd. You're their new hero. You're the new hero of white nationalists.
Oh my God. I'm so glad that we went this long, because I only got up through just before that point that we started listening to originally, and then I went back. So I haven't heard any of this. This is funny. Look at Hotep Jesus. He's like, you're the hero now. Somebody, he just displaced Duke. Somebody get this guy a wizard hat.
Let me say, I disavow.
I gotta see that again.
And this neo-Nazi white nationalist crowd. You're their new hero. You're the new hero of white nationalists.
I know.
Grand
let me say, I disavow them completely for agreeing with me for all the wrong reasons. but
actually, I agree with Scott Adams there. They did agree with him for all the wrong reasons. They acted like, and there were more than a few, they acted like Scott Adams was now finally discovering and finally telling the truth about how awful black people are. And so therefore, he's just like us. Well, that's disgusting. That's absolutely disgusting. And that's why we have nothing to do with those people. Nobody is awful or evil on the basis of their birth. But that's what they think unites them in this like superficial hatred of other groups. That's not what Scott Adams was saying at all. And as I pointed out in that first video on the gathering on Sunday, when I reviewed this, he knew a long time ago that you don't want to live in certain areas. So that's not new. Heidi says, the whole video is good. No timestamps here. Well, we're not going to be able to do the whole one, at least today.
I'm aware of that. I'm aware of the support. But yeah, I disavow them completely. They're just agreeing with me for the wrong reasons. But what can I do about that?
Yeah, I've been hit with the 13 and 50 for the past 48 hours. 13 and 50.
Wait, a 13?
Well,
oh my God.
This is a white nationalist trope where they say black people are 13% of the population and they commit 50% of the violent crimes in America.
So this is another one of the things that if you want to submit this as a data-driven fact, who cares? If you're united on looking at the warts of another group, you're in a sick place. You're not going to help Western kind. You're not going to recapture our destiny. I mean, you obviously, Scott Adams himself is saying, I look at the data, I know where I'm going to move. Plenty of anti-whites of all races. They look at the data, they look at the real world, they know where they're going to live, they know where they're going to raise their children. It's about what you're centering in your story. And we need to be saying 9 words, 5 key concepts. That's focusing with love, hope, and redemption on our people rather than on the warts of other groups. Our race has plenty of warts, and probably the biggest one is that those who pretend to care about us and our well-being will do everything in their power to destroy those like myself who don't want to hate on other groups. That's one of our biggest warts.
Right. So the whole 13 and 50 trope, which is, we don't have to get into how bizarre or inaccurate that stat is.
But let's be more provocative.
It doesn't. Don't feel the need to debate Hotep Jesus on whether or not that is accurate or inaccurate. Who cares? I don't care. I care about ending the victimization of Western kind. They can fight all day long about whether it's this percentage or that percentage. And then after you get done with the long fight, by the way, after you get done with the long fight of it's this percentage and that percentage, then they just defeat you with, well, it's your fault. And you're left holding the bag with nothing. You haven't made a people because nobody's going to come together on hatred of another group except sickos.
Let me ask you the question. When Black Americans become wealthy, they usually move away from high crime areas, don't they?
From high crime areas, yes.
Yeah. And there is, unfortunately, because of systemic racism, those.
He just went back in this same conversation from being a big supporter of this thing called systemic racism to the systemic racism doesn't bother me. We really have to question whether or not this back to systemic racism is a real tangible thing that is, etc. Let's see where he goes though.
High crime areas are concentrated often in Black areas for no fault of the Black people, because systemic racism has brought us to this point. So
okay, so you see where he's taking this argument. He's going to say the reasons for why, and this is exactly, do you appreciate how right I am? He's now going to say exactly what I've been telling you is in his mind, what he's been thinking before. He's about to say it. Oh my God.
So would it be reasonable for a successful Black person to say, you know what, the best thing I could do is go to a low crime neighborhood, and unfortunately for me, a lot of white people there. Would that be reasonable?
Yes, but some nuance, as we talked about in the green room. I live in an area predominantly that's got a lot of Indians moving in. So I perceive white people as being lower class. So
I was right about Hotep Jesus. I just said he's not living in a high crime area. He's living in an area with a bunch of, in America, we're talking about primarily Indians.
Be near the Indians. So if I see a Black man or a white man walking down my block,
I'm supposed to be the provocative one. You're ruining everything. You're totally fucking this up. Don't inject any outrages that I haven't already injected. Like it's hard enough for me to sweep up this debris as it is. You're just making it worse.
God. So yeah, the thing is that Hotep interrupted him was hey, there's an area. Scott Adams is saying there's a Black area. It's a high crime area. Why it's that way? Systemic racism. He put it backwards, but that's what he was putting together when Hotep Jesus jumped in. So, ergo, a successful Black person who has the money to move away from that does move away from it. And we see that. So this is a conversation that takes place with anti-whites all the time. And then they say it's okay because it's not the Black people's fault in the high crime area. It's the systemic racism that made it.
I just had to put that out there. But I get
right, well, that's out there now.
But I get what you're saying. But the white nationalists, I have to come back to this because the poll itself is divisive. The media has been divisive. I'm sure you've seen the media divide people by race. This poll was designed to trigger the type of response you had.
That's the lame argument and you see it sometimes, and people who call themselves black nationalists, they'll say that's, well, the people who are in charge, they're just trying to divide the races. Is that really what's happening? No. In the anti-white narrative, it's all the non-white people. I mean, they even call them people of color. Can it get any clearer than that? You have in this world the people of color, and therefore the people without color. You have in this world the what do they also say? Call them BIPOC people. You have the minorities. You have this whole litany of names for all non-white people versus white people. They're not dividing everybody by color. Come on.
You saw the poll.
Yeah, of course.
Right.
I mean, that's the only reason it's interesting.
Correct. Exactly. And I think, they knew that when they started that poll. They said, we're going to divide America with this poll. So I think if anybody needs to be...
Hold on. That you're mind reading there.
Okay.
I'm not sure they said we're going to divide America. I think they thought it was an important question, which I do too. Now,
no, that's not my assumption. He just criticized Hotep Jesus. Hotep Jesus did not catch that Scott Adams criticized him and then did the exact same thing he criticized him for. He mind read. So he said, don't you mind read? I'm going to mind read about what they were doing. Let me do the mind reading here, Hotep Jesus. Don't you see that the white Scott Adams is in the house? He's going to do the mind reading today. That they thought it was an important question. No. If there's any assumption that can be made about it, it was that this will get a lot of clicks. This will get a lot of views. People will come and look at our webzine or wherever it took place.
If you take the provocation away, is this not an important question? And isn't it a fair? And by the way, nobody disagreed with my proposition. Nobody's disagreed with it. Everybody's mad because I'm not allowed to say it. But and let me tell you the most interesting thing. The worst responses I got were from white people signaling. Yeah, I call them the dopamine gooners. It's like they're just tweeting at me, you're racist, over and over again, and they're just enjoying themselves in some weird way.
So notice how he has no problem attacking white people. What kind of system do you live in? What is the dominant dogma? What is the lay of the land? Where you can't criticize non-white people. You can't say even that what everyone knows, even when they're in the top of the anti-white hierarchy, none of them move to these areas. You can't say that out loud, but you can criticize white people. What deductions can we draw from this? Who's in charge? Who's being benefited? What's the dominant ideology?
Doesn't feel like it's about me. It's like I'm just the headlines they can goon to. But the weirdest thing was how black men responded to this. White men went immediately to racist, Nazi, and you couldn't talk them off that ledge. The black man pretty much came in with something kind of similar to your first reaction, which is there's something we don't know about this.
Okay, so the white race, they're pathetic, they're white people are. But he's saying the white race, pathetic, unhinged. The black people that came in, they were very astute. They were sagacious. They could smell that something was up.
They were smelling this.
Oh my God, he just said smelling. Did you just hear that? Holy shit.
Black men pretty much came in with something kind of similar to your first reaction, which is there's something we don't know about this. They were smelling this doesn't smell right. Like there's something about this. Right. There's some context missing. And
oh my God, I am reading his mind.
So mostly the response I got from black men was, I'm interested in this topic. Actually interested in the topic.
Okay.
And is that bad?
No. I think black men are very intelligent. They, tend not to fall for many of these media hoaxes. But why would the white liberals? Why are the white liberals, these whites, why are they doing that? Well, why
dopamine signaling? Yeah, in the white community, you have to get in first because you don't want to be somebody said that the last person applauding Stalin. You don't want to be the last one in. It's like you don't want to next week wake up and say, you know what? I'm starting to think that the whole Georgia.
That is one of the truest things that he has said, and that's how he's lived his life. Get in there first, being the biggest anti-white.
George Floyd thing was terrible. Like you don't want to be that guy. You want to be on it like when it's fresh. The longer you wait, the more racist you look. You gotta get on it.
I get you. I get you. But you asked the question, do I think that the question, is it okay to be white, is important? And in order to ask that question, that question is a relative question. You have to give it some context.
Let's see what he says here. Then I think I'll take a look at your comments and the financial gifts. And then I don't know if people want me to review the rest of this. It's pretty crazy. I can't believe I really should work for like Psychic Friends Network.
Interest important compared to what? I would say no. That question is not important.
Well, I think the form of the question, I agree with you, is not the right question. The proper form of the question would be,
he said, Hotep Jesus said, the question is not important.
Is the question issue.
See.
But you asked the question, do I think that the question, is it okay to be white, is important? And in order to ask that question, that question is a relative question. You have to give it some contrast. Important compared to what? I would say no. That question is not important.
No. So is it okay to be white, according to Hotep Jesus, is not an important question. If the question were, is it okay to be black? My guess is he's going to say, yes, a very important question. Everybody in society has to agree that it's not only okay, in fact, maybe they would be angry over that. It's splendid, it's glorious, it's miraculous. Everybody should worship it, maybe is what Hotep Jesus would say. He actually just said it's not relevant if the population thinks that white people shouldn't exist. He just said that wasn't relevant. That's kind of relevant, because when there's a population of people that have been dehumanized, so that half, according to this poll, say that it's not okay for them to be. This is Shakespeare, to be or not to be. That is the question. Whether it is nobler to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to cast my feet against a sea of sorrows, my fate against a sea of sorrows, and by opposing in them. No, it is whether or not a population of people should be is relevant, because when you have folks who don't value the humanity of a group of people, they don't value the people, then they can do things like gang up on them and beat the hell out of them. Then they can do things like pass laws about health equity that says that no white person can be healthier than the sickest non-white person. Then they can do things like a video I can't believe it's on Twitter, where a anti-white black guy walks up on a sidewalk and blows the head off some homeless white guy. Then that's what happens. So yeah, it's kind of relevant, asshole.
Well, I think the form of the question, I agree with you, is not the right question. The proper form of the question would be, is there a, let's say, a pushback? My phone is going crazy, you can imagine. Is there any pushback from teaching society that white people are the primary drivers of your pain? You're meaning the black community. And I would say that you should be aware of both the benefits of what you're doing, that's why you're doing it, but you should also know what the cost is.
So the question of whether or not it's okay to be white and therefore exist, because that's really what's being asked. I mean, seriously, could you imagine somebody going to work and saying, hey, you know what, everybody here, it's not okay to be Asian? I mean, okay, well, what are you trying to get at there? What are you trying to say? If it's not okay to be them, then what do you do with them? What happens with them? And then Scott Adams says, that question is important because of white people being your bane.
In part, you're meaning the black community. And I would say that you should be aware of both the benefits of what you're doing, that's why you're doing it, but you should also know what the cost is. And part of the cost is how people feel about stuff, their lived reality, right? So the lived reality of white people, and I'm not allowed to say this, so I'll be canceled tomorrow, is that it feels like the systems, the government, corporations, the media, are slowly creating this demonization narrative about white people.
He just proved me right again. Oh my God. Heidi, are you seeing this? Did you know that I was this right throughout the whole thing when you watched it? The systems are slowly getting, what does that mean? It's the exact same thing as people who are very young and naive and saying, you know what, things were good up until about 5 years ago. Were things good up until about 5 years ago or 10 years ago? Or did they just start noticing how bad things were 5 or 10 years ago? It's that they just started noticing that things were bad 5 or 10 years ago. So what's happening for Scott Adams when he says things are starting to get, this pressure is starting to come in on white people? Did pressure just start coming in on white people? Or did pressure just start coming in on Scott Adams? I think that's where we're going to stop it today. My God, if being right could make you walk on water, I'd be walking on water everywhere I go. You know, I didn't make these rules. I'm just winning the game. All right. Assuming Rabbit says, your mic did a weird saturation noise for a moment. Happened a couple of times before. Might need to check it later. I appreciate that. Thank you. That's how right I was. That's how right I continue to be. I didn't make the rules. I'm just winning the game. Sloth says, the only thing Scott Adams demonstrates is our success in making him aware of anti-whiteism. Well, yeah. Yeah. And my guess is, thank you, Nancy. My guess also is, and we'll get to the financial gifts right now. There probably been, think about Scott Adams. Where would Scott Adams go? What would his life be like? Does he invest in things? Does he invest in business to try to open businesses, start businesses? Maybe if he's trying to start a business somewhere and he's finding out that he can't get loans because he's white, he can't get tax forgiveness because he's white. Maybe it's where he used to be lauded at the whatever club that he likes to go to. Now he's not lauded anymore. In fact, he's like told to sit down, move to the back. The kind of things that are happening in his life are not hardships, I can assure you, with his many, many millions of dollars. But it is undermining something that he has become accustomed to over a great many years serving him. And that is being anti-white and getting there first and loudest, being anti-white. That's gotten him applause, acclaim, and financial reward throughout his life. And now things are slowly getting a little worse. So he had a tantrum. He had a tantrum when he looked at that poll and he said, he's feeling the pressure from all things going on in his life. He looked at that poll and he's like, they don't even, not only will they not make me rich anymore, and this is a sort of like a foster child or like a half child of anti-whiteism in general, the black people in this poll. Not only are they not making me rich anymore, not only are they not celebrating me as much anymore, not only are they not, my channel not growing like it used to anymore, not only all of that, but they don't even think, half of them nearly, that I should exist. So he threw a tantrum. He probably gave it 2 seconds of thought that he was going to bring that up. He was going to bitch about it on stream. And trust me, I have felt the urge to unload on a stream. He probably thought, I'm going to unload this off of me. I want to talk about it. I'm going to unload it. And then he sewed in, as I pointed out, these like little caveats, these places where he was going to be able to reel it back and then say, oh, well, look, the poll wasn't quite right. And here I'm actually talking about black people who are this way because of white people. He probably thought that, but there wasn't time as far as how quickly people started canceling the comics. And although I do feel like he knew that there would be some of that and he didn't care. And maybe he still doesn't care how much of it ends up getting canceled. Who knows? Really? Well, let me do this. Do I sound any different now? Let's see if it makes the sound again. Mind Over Magic. When did anti-white trend start? It started in time immemorial. It's been with us forever. It started out as what I was talking about this weekend. White people demonizing each other, different ethnicities. When you demonize somebody in your family for being genetic misfit or whatever it might be, that ends up rebounding on you. So we don't need to look back. We need to look forward and how to fix this. All right. We have our dear sister who financially gifted just a little bit late on Sunday. And here she is. I love Jesus Christ, not Hotep Jesus. This is not I love Hotep Jesus. That's somebody else, like maybe this guy's wife. This is I love Jesus Christ, financially gifting $10. Thank you so much. We deeply appreciate you and your commitment to white well-being. And she writes for white well-being. And we have, get out some 07s and some raucous emojis. Please. I'm not going to be able to like go berserk here. It's too late for that. It's almost 11 p.m. on the East Coast. I would be going berserk, of course, as always. But this is 07s. Please, raucous emojis. $25 financial, $25 beautiful dollar gift to me from the great Ulrach, and says, thanks for the streams. Would give more if I could. Well, God bless you. I really thank you for that. The appreciation of my effort, my time, my commitment to y'all and white well-being. And these ideas are, you hear me talk. You can take these things into your world, and you see what happened. How much embarrassment did you dodge by not adopting a Scott Adams is the new king of all things? He's Scott Adams. Like, could you see this now? People going to work, talking with their friends, talking with family members that might be, they might be ready to kick your ass out. And you go to them and you're like, Scott Adams, he is right about everything. And then the very next day, because you didn't listen to Jason, Scott Adams is like, white people are awful. Systemic racism is everywhere. Non-white people should be getting preferential treatment. Could you imagine how much reputation burn there is? How much humiliation? Scott Adams has come around. He's telling the truth. $25. 25. Keep the raucous emojis going, please. $25 more. Let's throw in some diamonds. Let's throw in some diamonds out there. Throw some diamonds into the live chat, ladies and gentlemen. We're dishing diamonds. Let me dish some diamonds. Dish the diamonds out. $25 from Maki. God bless you, Maki. $25. He says, about Scott Adams, I bet he is happy, but he used another word for happy. And then he said, explains his politics. Thanks, brother. I appreciate it. And then really toss the diamonds out now. Throw the diamonds all over the place. 07s and some marks, some applauding hands. Some applauding hands, if you can find them, for the No White Guilt clips, who just, how is this guy real? $100 from No White Guilt clips. What an absolute epic champion. And he said, oh, get this. Such diamonds for this guy. He says, $100 for being 100% right. People should only listen to you. I agree with that wholeheartedly. That is so awesome. Man, I really appreciate that. $100 for being 100% right. Where's Franklin tossing the diamonds out? Toss the diamonds out. That's how good we are in white well-being. We toss the diamonds out. Nobody else does that anywhere. Here's some diamonds for you and some diamonds for you. Can you believe No White Guilt Clips just gave a $100 for me being 100% right? God bless you, brother. We also have 2 financial gifts from Western Kind United. $2.50. Imagine you shaving your own white positive shaving our own white positive. Oh, so you're saying about like our own version of like the ADL. Yeah. I could imagine. And $1.25 also from Western Kind United. Thank you. And imagine no white guilt being able to have staff advocacy equals an ideal job. Yeah, it would be amazing. It would be absolutely amazing. You're 100% right. And that's the kind of thing, because the point that we have to intersect with the system is where we physically live. We don't have to be in their story in our mind. All minds occupy a space outside of the all thoughts in the minds occupy a space outside of the physical world. And people will move, as we talk about ideas animating the person, people will move their bodies, etc., in accordance with those ideas. Money and force, the ability to kill and etc., that all is beyond the reach of the thought. And so that's why we are in this field, if you or dimension, if you will. I don't mean like science fiction, because here we can win, and we are winning, and we demonstrate success all the time. But where we have to compete inside of their system with our physical bodies, liquidity is the fuel that makes the engine run. And so, yes, if we had multimillionaires rolling in and they said, hey, we want want this to be like the equivalent of the different non-white groups have as advocacies groups for their people, then we would be able to do, of course, much, much more with that wealth. There would be some other challenges, because there would be places that the anti-whites can strike. So it can't look identical to that. And we are very slowly building that. We do need, and we will need, those kind of investors in the future, but it won't look the exact same way as you see the advocacy groups for non-whites in the world. It'll have to be a little different to survive inside this system. So 100% agree, though, but thank you for that. Mind Over Magic asking the personal question of my age. No, personal questions I don't reveal. Nancy Drew says, Jason, can you see around the corner? Yes. Yes. It would seem that way. Oh, what's going on here? Okay. On entropy. Well, we have the lady herself. Let's get her some 07s and raucous emojis. Maybe some diamonds for Heidi Van Buskirk. Let's make sure she gets some diamonds. Have diamonds with that lady. $15 financial gift. And she's the one who brought this to my attention. It was so glorious. I was so busy. She started like hitting me on the phone. She's like, you're not going to believe it, Jason. You were 100% right. You were 1,000% right about Scott Adams. He's revealing it all. Everybody else got it wrong. It was totally epic. She's great. And then she went and did the timestamps for Adam's whole stream that he did in addition to his time with Hotep Jesus here. And so I'll be looking at that as well, thanks to our dear lady Heidi. And please let her know if she's already gone off to bed or to work, or if she's still here, that we're saying these things about her and appreciating her. Heidi, financial gifting, $15, says, thank you so much, Jason. Hail all of our people. We have the best people. Do not let guys like this trick you into digressing back into white guilt. Guys like this feed off of our emotional feelings of caring for others. It's just shock and awe to feed his own ego. No white guilt. Amen. And think about this. If Heidi would not have done this, we wouldn't be having the stream. I wouldn't be demonstrating. I wouldn't be celebrating with all of you how right that I was once again, and how wrong all of the other. I mean, think about the force. There's a lot of pressure when you have the pressure of the mob. They get an opinion and they push. That's a lot of pressure. You've seen those studies where, over the years you've read, where there'll be actors and there'll be one subject, and then like 8 out of 10 or 8 out of 9 or 7 out of 9 actors will hold a single opinion about something that they are all presented with. And the subject will always go with the mass of people. So there's a big pressure when you have all of these different content creators and organization leaders, and they're saying one thing, they're kind of in lockstep. And I'm like, no, you're wrong. You're wrong. And then that's why one of the main reasons they come after me, one of the reasons they come after me to destroy me. Because then when I say, no, you're wrong, if they're wrong, then it ends up making them look bad. But they should learn instead of getting angry with me. But not only would we not be celebrating this tonight, but we wouldn't have been watching this if it weren't for Heidi. And then me demonstrating time and again over the course of this stream that we've been watching that I'm right again and again and again by Scott Adams, revealing it. So God bless you, Heidi. Thank you so much. Let me check over here on Odyssey. And it's getting late, folks. It's getting late. We have Wing It over there on Odyssey, 5 library tokens, the cryptocurrency over there, and says Scott Adams was recently shacked up with a 29-year-old Instagram hottie. And did that relationship end? Is she white? I was listening to the review that Devin Stack did. I was in the shower and I heard him say something about a relationship, but I couldn't tell if it was positive or negative. The positive of the girl being young, but then I don't know if he was saying that it ended. If it did end, if the relationship ended recently, then that would have been an additional negative emotion that would have been on top of what he's experiencing as he just said, things are closing down. As I told you, he was thinking before he said that. That would have been just an additional negative thing that would have made him more likely to make a misstep, a miscalculation. And when he saw these poll results and then end up talking about that on the stream. Thank you for letting me know that. All right. Let me see D Live. Let me see D Live. Let me see. Bring me up D Live. And looks like we have a 1 lemon of cryptocurrency over there on D Live by Hartza. Thank you so much, Hartza. I appreciate it. One lemon over there. All right. We'll just make sure we didn't, and I'll take a look at the live chat and then we're going to roll out. The question is, are you religious? I can't read your name. Is that L-A-V? I don't know what the rest of it is. Is it? I think I see an S. Lavis? And you're asking, am I religious? You probably are thinking like going to a religious building in a religious community. And if that's the case, then no. I'm definitely spiritual, but not spiritualism. Lavish. Okay, cool. Thank you for fixing that for me. Lavish. So I'm spiritual, but not spiritualism. I'm very much in tune with the biospirit of the West that is inside of me, that is inside of every Westman. Masumi Rabbit says the sound happened again. Well, I'm going to have to see what the issue is when we're done. Oh, Heidi is here. She says, thank you, Jason. You're most welcome, sister. All right, let me jump to the top really quickly. And I am hungry. I am hungry to chew up Anti-whites. Not literally, because that would be gross. Heidi up here at the top saying, yes, I knew you were right. 100%. Thank you, sister. Okay, did I miss any of these? Jerome is here. Great to see you, brother. Montana Kid is with us. Franklin saying he's worthy of having no white guilt in his username. Who's that? Oh, Clips. No white guilt Clips. Oh, yeah. Without a doubt. Victorian Time Traveler. Great to see you, brother. The morning after, what's his name? Rant. The first thing I saw was a new story about a boy who had been shot in the head while riding his bike by someone of the same group. Wow. Yeah, it's terrible. It's really terrible. You know, if Scott Adams wanted to say anything of value, he would say, get away from anti-white people. Get away from them. Because they will ruin you. They will maim you. They will fire you. They won't hire you. They will, if you're white, they're coming for you. And if you're a good non-white person who says, hey, enough of this, it's immoral to do that to white people, or it's ruining my world too, they'll take you out as well. Absolutely, brother. I was limited in space for message. It was, imagine us having our own white positive version, yes, of the ADL. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. The great Slots. Gotta love this guy. He's like, Jason looks 32. So true. Based. Aces. Aces to Slots. Thank you, brother. Buscape is here. Helios Abbott is here. Great to see you, brother. Or was. Some of you probably gone off to bed by now. I understand, although I can't find it, that there was another personal question, but personal questions I don't speak to for obvious reasons. Lavish says, you seem like a noble gentleman. I appreciate that. Well, what do y'all, before I close it out, before I roll out, did y'all have any thoughts about this? Scott Adams, what did you hear? Have you been hearing that Scott Adams has now shared the unthinkable, and now he's the leader, as Hotep Jesus was saying? I couldn't imagine hearing somebody say something negative about a group of people and then concluding, he's one of us. He's on my side. That's why we are where we are. That's why it's not your fault. You just got to fix that shit. It's not your fault. And it doesn't make the thing that's being said untrue. It doesn't. I mean, if there were a group of people out there that were responsible for, say, all pickpocketing, it doesn't make it, if the data is there and the experience was there and the anecdotes are there and it's just a thing that everybody seems to know, it doesn't make it untrue to not center that group of people in your story of your life for criticism, for anger, for etc. It doesn't make it untrue. What you do is you deprive yourself of strength, of love, of power, of ever becoming a people if you're focused on other groups. I'll be saying this until the end of time, I guess, and explaining it in as many ways as I can. White people just don't seem to get it. Most of us. Time Traveler says, I used to be sick like that, but not anymore. Amen, brother. That is beautiful. Thank you for writing that. And where is my great Kate? Is she in the live chat tonight? Elaine says, are you going to finish up reviewing this on a future stream, Jason? I vote for you keep going. All right. Well, let's remember, what is it, like 45-minute mark? Is that all we got through? That was on 1 1/4 speed. Jeez. Celtic Jim says, I don't know how old you look, but you look healthy. I am healthy. Very healthy. A little sleepy at the moment, but very healthy. Elaine saying that I was raised Christian. That's right. Left the church because of systemic anti-whiteism. Yeah, I had all the pastors everywhere I went. They were always like, if anti-whiteism says it's a sin, then God agrees. And I thought, no. Artificer saying, what's your late night snack? Oh, well, I have protein shakes and sometimes a little bit of, if I have chicken breast or something like that, I'll have just a tiny bit of that. Protein is good at any time of the day. The great Fornal is still with us. Lavish asking the personal question of my zodiac sign. No. No. Aw. There's my Katie. I knew she was here. Axum says, what did they tell you is a sin that made you question Christianity? I didn't question, like, I didn't develop a problem with Christianity, the religion. Thank you for asking that, actually, because I don't want to give the wrong impression. I developed a problem with the interpretation of Christianity through anti-whiteism. And it's the same everywhere. It doesn't matter where you go. Everybody is viewing either their faith and even science through the lens of anti-whiteism. And increasingly, science through the lens of anti-whiteism. So it was how preachers and priests would define to me good and evil and etc. And in their no matter what it was not every Sunday, but most Sundays. And there would be something that they would say that I would say, no, this is not just taken from the Bible. This is you as an anti-white trying to make the Bible conform to anti-whiteism. For example, encouraging biological white erasure. That's pretty common at every church I went to. And I would argue, of course, there are passages in the Bible, but I would argue, just generally speaking, that God would not have made different groups if he didn't want different groups. And they said, oh, no, that's a sin. Love is love. God is love, and love is love. And then you see where that goes. you see where that ends up taking you in these churches and etc. They end up using the same thing for welcoming this entire spectrum of sexualities and attractions and etc. Because you've started down that's it's a logical consequence of that illogic. And so I felt it oppressive. And so I was just like, enough, I'm leaving. I was getting anti-whiteism everywhere else, just like you get it everywhere else. I didn't need to get it at church. The great Lunder from down under is here. What's your social security number, he asks. 513. They're going to be like, oh, that's a foreign social security number. Hey, No White Gil Clips is here. If I could throw fire from my salutes, it would be like fire. Oh, Clips said it too. What's your social security number? No, I get it. I mean, it's normal to have it. These are just normal conversations. And when you're having a normal laid back conversation with folks and you ask just anything, and it's not in the real world, in the regular world, it's not like really revelatory, but in the world of wanting to put an end to the victimization of white people, it's like people who want to finish you off, they're just looking for every tidbit wherever they can because they just want to come finish you off. Pirate Bob is with us. You know, that would be like a great name for a journalist, like in the field journalist. Could you imagine if what's the news agency that would like to compete with Fox News? Could you imagine if, like, we're going to go to our man on the field right now, Pirate Bob? Can you tell us what's happening on the ground? Cool name. All right. What's my social security number? You guys. Okay, good. We didn't miss anybody. We got on one of these platforms, I'm not going to tell you which one, but some kind of ant gnat showing up. They get it wrong all the time. I get it right. So they show up and they're like, slanders for you, Jason. Nothing but slanders for you. Jason's not celebrating hatred of black people. What? Let's get over there and slander him. He's probably half black. You can just tell by looking at him. All right, what do we have here? Let me turn this down first. So don't forget, tomorrow I'm on with Yiz. It's going to be glorious. We're going to have a heck of a good time. We're going to have a short outro. So I want everybody to have a good night and look for me over with Yiz tomorrow. And we have some interesting interviews coming up. Very interesting interviews. So keep your eyes and ears open. Things are only getting good here. In 23, we're going free.